In autumn 1999, Paul Bevan found a Roman coin in this field in Standish in Gloucestershire. Then he found another one and another, and an obsession was born. And 5 years, one archaeology course and several trenches later, he'd amassed boxes and boxes of Roman and Iron Age finds, like these brooches, these tesserae, this Iron Age axe, all this building material. There's clearly loads of archaeology here, but what exactly is it? Well, there's only so much that one man, however driven, can find out with a trowel and a metal detector, so Paul has invited this lot in to find out. And how long have we got to do it? Just 3 days. The field in question is in Standish near Gloucester, slap bang in the middle of one of the wealthiest areas of Roman Britain. And with finds ranging from the Iron Age to Roman, it should provide a snapshot of the lives of ordinary Brits at the time of the Roman invasion. Quite a little treasure trove that Paul's found.
It's a terrific little haul. We've got Roman building material, Roman pottery, Roman brooches, Roman coins, and some Iron Age stuff as well.
Have we got any clues yet as to what it might be?
I think the fact you've got Iron Age stuff and Roman stuff suggests it's probably a farmstead going through over that period. And in fact, the geophysics suggests that as well.
You've done this already?
We actually did it 4 years ago, but we've resurveyed it with a new instrument, and look, it's a whole complex of responses.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of this oval stuff and circular stuff here looks like Iron Age stuff, perhaps Iron Age roundhousing enclosure, whereas this rectilinear stuff is more what we expect from Roman fields, you know, Roman paddocks, and probably even some buildings in there as well.
Is this where you got all the finds from?
No, most of the finds came from this area.
And we haven't surveyed that yet, so we're going to have to extend the geophysics to cover right to the edge of the field.
Did you put a trench in?
I put a trench in on John's earlier geophysics down there.
And what'd you get?
Well, I believe I found an Iron Age surface.
What do you mean you believe you found one?
Well, the week that I chose last year, it happened to be the hottest week of the year, and I had to close the trench down to preserve the archaeology.
So you're not quite sure what you got?
I'm not, no.
What are we going to do?
Well, I think probably the first thing could be to reopen Paul's trench and see just what you had there. But there's plenty of other targets on the geophysics, isn't there?
Like what?
Well, perhaps these pits, are they Iron Age?
Yeah.
And it'd also be nice to look at some of the rectilinear ditches, see exactly what the
See if
date
they
is.
are actually Roman, yeah.
And again.
Phil's looking for the early end of our story in Trench 1, where he's expecting to find an Iron Age roundhouse next to the stone surface that Paul uncovered last year.
Yeah, I think that's Paul's excavation.
Matt puts in Trench 2 over these two large pits. Finds from these should give us an idea of what people were eating and chucking away here, and when. Geophys are on the hunt for a Roman building in the area of the field where Paul found most of his roofing tiles and tesserae pieces from mosaics. Could there be a villa here? An hour into the dig, and the unpredictable British summer is causing Phil problems in Trench 1 as he tries to make sense of Iron Age archaeology in wet clay.
The problem is identifying individual cut features.
What, you're going to have to rely on the geophysics, you mean?
If that'll solve me for once, I'd relish the thought.
So it wasn't like this last year when you dug it?
No, hottest day of the year.
Hottest day of the year.
Ever recorded, yeah.
Jane, now you've had a chance to look at all of Paul's pottery, have you been able to draw any conclusions from it?
Well, he's found a very interesting assemblage of Roman pottery. He has fine Samian tableware from central and eastern Gaul. He has one piece of amphora, which we know comes from southern Spain, and that would have been used to contain olive oil.
Oh, that's nice.
And here we have a range of material imported from Poole Harbour in Dorset, black burnished ware. And we also have a range of ceramic building material, mostly roofing tile. So we're getting the whole range of material you might expect from a well-appointed Roman household.
What kind of date are we talking about for this?
Mostly we're looking at material dating from the 2nd to 4th century.
Paul's finds bear striking similarities with Froster Court just 5 miles away. Excavations there have revealed an Iron Age farmstead which evolves over the centuries into a substantial stone-built Roman villa with roofing tiles and ceramic wares just like the ones from our field. It's taken over 3 decades to untangle the story at Froster. But at Standish, we've got just 3 days. It's brightened up in Trench 1. Phil and Raksha have literally hit their first find next to the probable roundhouse.
Look at that truncated pot, just going right the way round. I mean, this is good. I mean, I know we've hit the top off of it, but at least it gives us that answer. How deep do we have to machine? That's as far as we dare machine. Look at it.
The pits in Trench 2 have already thrown us a bit of a curved ball.
Oh dear. It's skull.
Nobody was expecting human remains here.
That looks very, very human, doesn't it?
It does. Not much of a ridge
No.
around the middle bit.
Young lady.
A young lady.
Who is she and when did she die?
But I think most of it went with the plough.
In Trench 1, Phil's called Jane in to help identify his pot.
So I'm dying to know what sort of pot it is and how old it is.
Yeah.
Well, you have a very big pot here, Phil, and you've got a tiny piece of rim just here, which suggests to me you've got a large storage jar with a slightly everted rim. And we're looking at something that would have come right round up to this. So we have lost probably over half of it. It's got little shell, fragments of white shell in it, which is local, so this suggests it's been locally made.
Yeah.
And we see little red-brown pieces.
So what's that, the local sand or something?
No, this is grog. Grog is pre-fired clay, pottery that's already been fired and then it's crushed up again and added back into the clay.
Right.
And it makes it much more plastic and malleable for forming large vessels such as this.
And so does that enable you to give some sort of date to it?
It does, because grog as a technology is introduced into Gloucestershire in around the early 1st century AD.
The Iron Age people who used this pot lived through some dramatic changes because they witnessed the Roman invasion and the imposition of a whole new political and economic structure. But how long did they cling on to their Iron Age lifestyle while the landscape around them changed? Military colonies sprung up at Gloucester and Cirencester, and a major Roman road carved through the countryside. How far do you reckon our farm is from this Roman road?
Oh, it's not very far at all. It's only about 1.5 kilometres. If you can imagine, in the Roman landscape, the military need lots of produce to move around. They need farms to provide grain, hides, all that sort of thing. In the Roman economy, they actually take over the earlier Iron Age farms, as it were, and drag them into their economy, like tenant farmers.
That's got to be a hill fort, isn't it?
It is, yeah. You see, there's this big promontory right on the edge of the Cotswolds, dominating all this landscape out towards the Severn. Classic place for an Iron Age hill fort.
And there you've got our side sort of stuck between the two, haven't you? On this steppe of flat land.
That's right, it's actually prime agricultural ground. And of course that's why the site is there. It's a farmstead. It's exploiting this good ground in the Iron Age period and through the Roman period and beyond.
Bridge is looking for the later Roman end of the story in the more rectilinear ditches of Trench 3.
Bit more interesting, like burnish ware or something.
Just a few metres away in Trench 2, the human remains are now looking like a burial. It's obviously a skeleton, but can you say any more than that, Mark?
Well, from the actual position of the body, it's clearly in a crouched position on its side, tightly flexed.
So what would that indicate?
One of two possibilities for date, either late Neolithic, early Bronze Age, or late Iron Age.
And what would your money be on at the moment?
My money would be on late Iron Age, given that we know there's late Iron Age material from the site.
How does it fit in with the geophys?
Well, the geophysics here, I mean, we're looking for these two anomalies.
Is this one of them?
No, you wouldn't expect something to show with that kind of strength on the geophysics that's just a grave, unless you've got a lot of grave goods.
Paul, can we borrow you for a minute?
Yes.
Could you run your little machine over this, see if you can get any iron spikes?
Yes, there's iron in there.
Whereabouts?
Just there, by the shoulder.
Hey!
Up here.
So what might that be?
Well, that's nice, because if you've got a strong iron signal up by the shoulder, first of all, it tells us it's not Bronze Age. But secondly, it could well be an iron brooch, which are not uncommon in late Iron Age barrels. And that's something we can date.
Excellent. So we know that Iron Age people were dying here, but where did they live? The answer to that might be in Trench 1, where Phil attempts to locate an Iron Age roundhouse. You cheered up yet? You were as miserable as sin this morning.
With reason, Tony, with reason.
What's your reason?
Well, I'm digging on clay. You wouldn't believe it, but clay is the most difficult material to work on. It really is. I mean, if it's sunny, then it dries and it goes like concrete and cracks. If it chucks it down raining, it's an absolute quagmire. Believe it or not, this overcast, damp sort of atmosphere is just about the most ideal thing. It just shows up the contrast so much better. Now look, come and have a look at this. Here's our trench, L-shaped. That bit is that bit along there, and then it runs out in that direction along there. Now then, be led by this big black blob there. You see in the corner here, we've got this big area with pottery. It's very, very dark.
Yeah.
Now then, here we've got this straight line, this ditch.
Here somewhere?
Well, you're standing
here,
on
this,
it.
This,
you're standing on it.
Yeah. Oh,
Look.
I can see it.
Well, look, there's a piece of pot there, and it's running along and running straight up there.
Yeah.
Okay. Here we've got another curving one going round there. And this is a bit more difficult to see. But if you're led by these bits of pot in there, bit of bone there, another bit of pot, and it's actually coming round here like that.
So what you've done really is to have confirmed the geophys, isn't it?
Yeah, but that is what's so good about it. I mean, we can now rely on this geophysical print to tell us about the rest of the site.
So could these marks in the clay be the remains of an Iron Age roundhouse? And since we have complete faith in geophys, can they find us our Roman villa?
Now done the whole of this end of the field where all the Roman building material was supposed to come from.
Right.
And you can see for yourself.
Doesn't look anything Roman there to me.
No, I mean, we've got some fantastic results, but as you say, it all looks as though it's probably Iron Age, a series of probable roundhouses.
Yeah.
Curvilinear ditches, paddocks, enclosures, nothing rectangular, regular, that strikes you as sort of Roman building.
No. But I mean, there are a number of targets there. I mean, that, for example, looks quite a nice thing to look at, doesn't it? It looks like a roundhouse, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's got an entrance to the southeast.
That's exactly it.
Okay, so let's have a look at that one. In the meantime, you'll carry on, won't you?
Yeah, because if you look, I think we've got a boundary to the settlement there.
Right.
Could it come round and follow that?
Well, it'd be nice to see if there was an enclosure with nothing beyond it, wouldn't it? Or fields beyond it.
And then we'll have to come back to this part.
Oh, how big is this field?
Too big.
Oh, God, you can do it.
So there's still no sign of a Roman building to go with Paul's finds. But it looks like we have a much earlier structure. Trench 4 goes in over the shape of our second possible Iron Age roundhouse under Kerry's watchful eye.
That's it, isn't it?
That's it, coming through. Just give it.
Or should that be John?
Your trench.
No. Just give it one more and then we'll do what John wants. That's better.
The Bally sun's come out.
In Trench 1, Phil's mood is as changeable as the weather.
Look how long the shadows are. You can't see a thing. Can't see a thing. Go away. I'm grumpy again.
We hadn't found any grave goods buried with our skeleton in Trench 2, and mysteriously the iron signal that the metal detector picked up has disappeared.
It's ready now to lift and plan and photograph.
And do we still think it's Iron Age?
Well, the only find to come out of the fill of this so far is Roman pottery.
Oh.
So it has to be
early Roman or Roman at least.
Right.
No earlier than that.
So not Iron Age at all.
Our bones experts confirmed the skeleton to be a woman in her late 30s who probably died after the Roman invasion. Buried without grave goods, the chances are she was a low-status worker. It's been a productive day one, glimpsing into the lives of the British at the time of the Roman invasion. And in Trench 3, Bridge is getting some clues as to what happened next. Bridget!
Yes.
You got something interesting there?
Well, it's a very tantalising pot piece here, and I'm just itching to get into it, just in case it's whole.
Would be nice, wouldn't it?
Isn't
What do you
it?
reckon it is, Mark?
I think it's probably black burnish ware, which was made on the South Dorset coast.
So what would that have been used for?
It's fairly everyday stuff, cooking, storage, that kind of thing.
And did all this lot come out of the same trench?
We've got amazing bits of pottery here. Look, we've got these lovely rims here. We've got a piece of Samian. We've got some bases. We've got black burnished ware. And we've got some sized decoration. It's just wonderful.
Yeah.
So what story is this telling us?
Well, most of this stuff is coming into the 2nd century AD, so this is the local potting industry in a Romanised tradition. People are now starting to get access to imports from France. We've got amphora from Spain. It's all part of the gradual Romanisation of the settlement and people slowly moving up market.
What about structure in this trench?
Well, there's certainly evidence again. We've got more roofing tile coming up.
Yeah,
so there's certainly something fairly close by.
And we've got this daub here that was used for the walls of a Roman building.
But no foundations, no walls, nothing like that?
Absolutely
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not yet.
But there's always tomorrow.
Experience the past like never before with History Hit's award-winning original documentaries and ad-free podcasts with our expert historians like Dan Snow, Susanna Lipscomb, Lucy Worsley, Mary Beard, Tristan Hughes and myself, Matt Lewis. Sign up for an exclusive discount using the link in the description and embark on your historical journey from the wonders of ancient Egypt and the life of Anne Boleyn to the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte and the discovery of Shackleton's Endurance. Get history wherever, whenever, exclusively on History Hit.
Beginning of day 2 here at Standish in Gloucestershire, and in this field we've had the most extraordinarily good geophys. All these curved features, that round one there, which I'm told is probably a roundhouse. In fact, the whole thing is a great Iron Age landscape. But what really interests me is the possibility that there's a Roman villa here. We've had lots of finds, haven't we? Lots of pottery, but no structure at all. You were shaking your head. Why?
Because I don't think we should go villa chasing.
What do you mean?
Well, there's clearly some Roman activity somewhere in this field, but we don't quite know what it's indicating yet. But there's nothing on the geophysics that indicates anything like a Roman villa.
OK, so what do we do about it?
Well, John has said there's enough noise in this area here. There might be a timber-built structure. So what I think we'll do is put a trench in here next to where we found the freshly broken stuff and see if that's not where the centre of Roman activity is.
But what about the Iron Age? I mean, we haven't even got the focus of that yet, have we?
No, I mean, well, there probably isn't a focus to that in the sense of a sort of centre an estate, probably a scatter of buildings across the landscape. So we need to continue with the 3 areas we've got open. We need to know whether it's early Iron Age stuff, whether it goes right the way through, whether it's just at the Roman end of the Iron Age. We'll get that from what we've got in the holes.
The early part of our story is coming on, with excavations over 2 possible Iron Age features. Phil's now convinced that he's found our first structure, an Iron Age roundhouse. Bit by bit, he's lifting the huge storage pot sunk in the middle of it.
Hello, little rim. You're not supposed to be up there.
Our Iron Age Brits would have used this pot to store their grain or water. Trench 4, which was placed over the second roundhouse, has produced results that even I can see. This trench is really coming on now, isn't it? You can really see this thick, black curving line, and it sort of stops here and then starts up again all the way around to where you are.
Yeah. I mean, it's lovely because it matches perfectly what we saw in the geophysics and we thought might be evidence of an Iron Age roundhouse, and we're now fairly happy that's what we've got.
So why have you got this big black line?
Well, people tend to call these things drip gullies and assume they've been formed by water running off the eaves of a thatched roof. They're
But
quite
then it
irregular.
stops, doesn't it? And
yeah.
then it doesn't start again.
The actual building itself would have actually been within this, set back perhaps a metre from the inner edge of the ditch. And you'd have an entrance about so wide.
Yeah.
But if you look where Ian is, there's a lot of pottery coming out of there, so there's no doubt about the date of this. We've got things like this, which is a classic Middle Iron Age type of rim, probably talking about 3rd, 2nd century BC.
So why have we got a big black blob right in the middle of a roundhouse?
Yeah. In fact, it's a ditch of Roman date that would have been cut through here long after the roundhouse itself had disappeared. Some of the other blobs may turn out to be Iron Age pits and give us some more dating evidence. We're only going to find out by excavating them.
So we just keep going down now?
Absolutely.
At the time of the Roman conquest in AD 45, Standish was in the pro-Roman Dubunni region of late Iron Age Britain. As our farmstead became enmeshed in the Roman military structure, our Romano-Brits, as they became known, could have accumulated sufficient wealth to aspire to leave their Iron Age roundhouses behind them and upgrade to a posh new house built with the roofing tiles, daub and tesserae that Paul found. So where is it? In goes Trench 5.
That hasn't moved very far either. It's really nice quality, pretty unabraded pottery.
Excellent.
Altogether, saying that there should be more substantial structural features somewhere nearby.
The pottery that Bridges found is so sharp-edged in comparison to Paul's finds that our archaeologists have had to reconsider the location of any Roman structure. It now seems that centuries of ploughing have moved the finds up the field, away from their original location near Trenches 5 and 3. It looks like we're getting closer to our building in Trench 2, where Matt's found some rubble that could be from the foundations of a Roman building, and among it, some iron slag.
Ah, there we go. Beauty. Is that from the bottom of a furnace? Where you burn your ore and all the clag goes to the bottom and kind of sets ironworking on site.
So our Romano-Brits were making iron products here, such as the iron axe that Paul found with his metal detector. John, before you slope off to lunch, have you finished the geophys on this area yet?
We've not done the whole field, but I think we've got the whole complex mapped now. You remember the boundary on this side of the field? We've now extended, and look at this sort of funnel arrangement at that point.
It's weird, it's like a little entranceway in there, isn't it?
Yeah, and we've extended this way and clearly got the limits of the whole complex.
So what does all that say to you?
Well, I think we can stop.
Stop geophysing?
Yes.
Well, you can have a lunch break, give us a lift.
Well,
But
I think
it could
we
be
found
anything
it.
in the rest of the field. It might be a pyramid.
Mark, what do these Iron Age settlements look like?
In this area, we've got very little to go on, any sort of comparative material. The best site still is Froster, just a few miles to the south of here, which of course does develop into a villa. You can see we've got this irregular, rectilinear ditched enclosure. And then within that, the excavations revealed numerous circular structures. If you compare that with the geophysics that we've got from here at Standish, you can see we've got these very similar types of enclosure, and of course at least 3 circular structures, 2 of which we've now confirmed by excavation. And the fact that we've got at least 3 of these suggests that we may be seeing the beginnings of a small village starting to form in the closing centuries of the Iron Age. As to how it actually looks, I mean, we can only speculate, but Victor's been working on a rather fine sketch here that gives a nice impression of what we've just been talking about. You can see each of the roundhouses, these smaller plots perhaps being used for vegetable growing, corralling animals, and probably looking at extended family units occupying each of these little plots.
So this looks a bit like a snapshot in maybe the middle of the 1st century AD, because I see here on the edge somebody's experimenting with the more Roman style of building.
Yes, this radical new introduction, yes.
Corners, yes.
Are you as frustrated as I am by the fact that we still haven't found this villa?
Well, yes, I am. I mean, in a way, because it'd be lovely to find a lovely Roman villa with stone walls and mosaics.
Underfloor heating, fountains.
Oh, yeah, the whole shooting match would be great. But, you know, we know there's about 1,000 Roman villas in this country of different shapes and sizes, and even if you stick 50 people in them, to include the family and slaves and farm workers and that sort of thing, that's only 50,000 people out of a population we know must have been anywhere between 3, perhaps as much as 6 million.
So where were the rest of them living?
Well, what we now know from modern archaeology is that far more of them were living in ordinary rural farmsteads. And even, you know, the Iron Age roundhouse we're always hearing about, that building remained in use throughout Britain, throughout the Roman period.
But there are wooden Roman buildings as well.
Exactly. Now, the kind of thing that we could have is a basic timber frame. When you drop a timber into the sleeper trench like that, then you build up a frame of timbers all the way along, and in between that, a lattice work of wattle and daub. So that's a sort of twig-like structure here, framework, slap plaster on top of it. That is perfectly strong enough to support a heavy tiled roof. You can stick painted wall plaster on it, you can still have mosaics.
But presumably it's going to be much harder for our archaeologists to find.
Exactly, because we can only see what is visible to us, and unless timber has been burnt, it's just not going to be there.
If Guy's right, there'll be nothing to see but clay, Phil's favourite. But there's a ray of hope in Trench 5.
Bridget, I hear you've got a bit of wall.
Yeah.
Oh, crikey, yeah.
Yesterday, I wanted to get some structure and bingo, look what's here. All this masonry.
But it's not a very massive structure, is it?
No, it's not at all. It's only about 40 centimetres. I don't think it's enough to be called footings for a masonry wall.
But it could be for a timber wall. If you put a 1 foot square timber in on top of that, you could support a timber frame building then, couldn't
Absolutely.
you?
What I think we need to do is actually do some resistance survey.
Right.
I hear what you say, it's not a solid stone foundation, but we stand a better chance of seeing a building with resistance.
Until now, John's been using magnetometry, which measures changes in the Earth's magnetism and shows up metals and heat-affected areas. The resistance survey will pass an electric current through the ground. Solid features such as stone impede the current and will show up as high readings against the low readings of clay soils.
Stuart, what are you doing on a bike in the middle of a field?
Well, riding it, I suppose, is the obvious answer, but this is my mobile incident room. I've got everything I need here. I've got my aerial photograph, I've got mobility, and I've got the landscape around me. It's a great way to do landscape archaeology.
That's all you need.
Yeah. That's the field where we're finding all the remains in there. We're standing here. And down here is a very, very major stream going all the way down.
Yeah.
Now, if we know from other sites, if there's a villa, and they say if, it's a big if, it ought to be somewhere along this stream course. We know the site at Froster to the south. It's a very similar site to here, and that has a villa with it. And where is it? It's next to the only major stream source.
Stuart goes in search of a villa elsewhere. But the archaeologists are still convinced that the finds suggest a substantial Roman building within our field. So Mick and Jane decide to take another look at the pottery.
This is of particular interest. It looks a bit sad. It was a piece of Samian.
Really? So it looked like that originally?
It would have looked like that originally.
Good Lord, so that's really worn.
And it's particularly prestigious, this item, because it's a lion's head from a mortarium with a hole in his mouth area for pouring, a spout. And we can just see the grits on the inside area. This would have created a surface for grinding. And it would have dated to the late 2nd, early 3rd century.
And one decent handle.
And one decent handle, and you would like this, Tony, because that would have been a tankard.
How big?
Well, I'm told they can go up to 3 pints.
I think this is more Phil's line.
Yeah, Phil's line, that is, yeah. So what's the latest material we've got?
Latest we have is this little black burnishware dish, little flanged conical bowl.
With a big sort of rim sticking out.
Exactly. This was made from around 270, so that's the late 3rd century, and they still made them into the 4th century.
But that's still sort of a long time before the end of the Roman period.
It is a long time.
What does all this tell you?
Well, I think it confirms that we've got an Iron Age site going right the way through, but not quite through to the end of the Roman period. I would have expected at that end to see, you know, tesserae, wall plaster, heating flue tiles. I know we've got a few tesserae from the field, but from what we've done, we've got nothing that would shout villa.
Bombshell, so that means there might never have been a villa at all here.
I think that's like, well, we've got to see what Bridget comes up with in the trench she's opened up. But I think that's what it's looking like, I think.
I told you we shouldn't be chasing a villa.
No,
but you wouldn't
I,
listen to me,
I
would
just
you?
didn't. I ignored you, didn't I? Yeah, I didn't listen.
The Iron Age end of our story is taking shape in Trench 4. Ian has discovered an intriguing stack of pots sunk into the entrance of the roundhouse. Nobody yet knows why they were buried. Stewards failed to find any sign of a villa elsewhere, so all eyes are on the Geophys. John, what did you threaten to do at lunchtime? Stop geophysing? You've been beavering about all afternoon.
Yeah, well, Mick wouldn't let us. Remember the wall in Bridget's trench over there?
Yeah.
Comes through on that sort of angle. We've now done the resistance, and look, we've got this fantastic change between the low resistance, the yellow, and the high resistance, and that's where you'll have building rubble, maybe foundations.
Could that possibly be our villa?
Well, look where it is on the map. There's Bridget's trench, and it's right in the centre of this area of interest. There's one caveat.
What?
It could be that it's all geological.
Ready when you are.
There's just about time for Phil to dig a test trench to find out if the Geophys shows archaeology or geology.
Yeah. I think they're going to come down on a mosaic floor.
Well, if it is, I still think it looks very clean at the moment. Still looks so bally clean, doesn't it?
John's not looking too confident.
See, this stuff is just so dry compared to the clay. This is going to look like gravel, it's going to look like building rubble. Whereas this clay, by comparison, is just so moist and full of water. That's going to be the contrast in resistance.
So it's all geology. Now our best hope for a building is in Trench 5, where Bridget's line of rubble is looking like the foundations of a timber structure.
If we've only got that one wall doesn't make a building, so
but
where's the rest of it?
we haven't quite got one wall. It looks like we've got a return. You see, just coming up here towards your foot.
What, down here, you mean?
Yeah.
Right.
And so that would be two rooms attached to the one wall.
Yeah. It's the most substantial thing we've had, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it is. It's substantial. And also, what's very nice is we've found something that could imply a substantial building.
Oh,
we've got a
crikey.
tessera, a very, very nice fine-grained limestone. It could be a mosaic fairly close.
Well, we shouldn't be too surprised because Roman timber buildings can be substantial, reasonably impressive buildings in their own right. And we know from towns like London that they could have tessellated mosaic floors and painted wall plaster and substantial tile roofs.
So that doesn't negate the fact that it might still be timber that we're looking at.
No, not at all.
Right, I'm surprised at that, to be honest.
We're not looking at a palace at all, by any means. But I think that's a very interesting sign.
Okay.
So have we found a luxury Roman pad, a pretty basic one, or nothing at all? We're ready to start the serious work of day 3, looking for our Roman building. The situation is this. Over there in Matt's trench, you've got all that stone, but it looks like it's probably only rubble. Whereas here in Bridget's trench, you've got something that looks a bit more promising down here. Now, we can't excavate the whole area between these two trenches, so we're going to be relying on John's Geophys.
No, you're not.
No, why not?
Because we've drawn a blank.
Yuck.
Well, there's Matt's trench, there's Bridget's trench. This is all geology. Between the two, we've got nothing.
Mick?
It's okay. We just go back to first principles.
Which are?
Well, you know, in the old days when we didn't have geophysics, you just extend the excavated area and see what you've got. So we've got walls and things in here. We move this way, see if we've got other walls to go with it.
He's being his usual bright, happy Birmingham self.
I'm all with him. As far as I'm concerned, he's right. That's a wall down there. So what we have to do is work over here, find another wall, make sense of this building.
Well, given that we found absolutely nothing, they're being remarkably sunny, we'll see how they feel at lunchtime. With just one day left, it's time to bring in the heavies. Phil joins Bridge in Trench 5.
Ooh, what's this? Oh, it's a rim.
Looks like a handle, doesn't it?
No, it's broken. It's the rim of something, more like a vase or something, doesn't it?
Any roll, we can sort that out in a minute. Let's get on and strip this off.
There's a fascinating twist to our Iron Age story emerging from Trench 4, where Ian found the stack of pots. You got bones coming up there?
Oh, just a few. It's a horse. Or part of a horse. I mean, this is really getting to be very exciting.
Why do you say that's exciting?
Well, in the Middle and Late Iron Age, across much of southern Britain, you do get these things that people call structured or special deposits. Ian's exposed here 3 or 4 pots that are superimposed and crushed. We've got another pot here. All this burnt stone.
So are you saying that these and the horse are deliberately put in here?
It is a deliberate deposit. Quite often these deposits are thought to be associated with special events, like perhaps the abandonment of this house and its demolition. It could be like a closure event. And perhaps this involves a feast, and then everything that was associated with that feast, it's all gathered up and placed into this.
What's the significance of the horse?
The horse is an animal that takes on growing status in the Iron Age. If you can be seen to afford to kill and consume a horse, it confirms your rank. I mean, it might have been the old nagging, honestly, but it's still a horse.
Have you got any dating for this?
Yeah, the Pottery is giving us some very good dating information. It's towards the end of the Middle Iron Age in this area, so it's between about 150 and 50 BC.
So the roundhouse in Trench 4 must have been closed around 50 BC. The pottery in Phil's roundhouse dates to the 1st century AD. We'd taken it for granted that our Iron Age farmstead consisted of a group of roundhouses, but it now seems impossible that all 3 can have coexisted, and that's a bad sign for Victor. You're going to have to go back to the drawing board. That was abandoned by the time these 2 were going.
So you mean demolish that?
Yeah.
And build that one?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
As we search for some clarity to the Roman end of our story, every find helps.
Jamie, we were just looking at this big old rim, wondering whether it might be amphora or storage jar.
Well, Phil, I think what you've got here is a very large storage jar. Quite a squat dumpy pot, but quite a hefty thing for storage.
So it's about, what, this height?
I would guess so, yes. And we're looking at the later part of the Roman period, maybe 4th century.
The date of the storage pot confirms that people were living here late into the Roman period. But where were they living? It's mid-morning and the rubble foundations seem to be dying out.
I'll tell you something else. There's no finds over on this side too.
No, there's nothing.
Nothing.
It's clean as a whistle.
I think we'll move over, Roger, please.
In Trench 1, Mark and Paul are cleaning up the Iron Age surface that Paul excavated last year. Mark, are we actually inside the roundhouse here?
Yes, we are, yeah, and just sort of cleaning up around these packed stones here.
Is this natural?
No, you see a lot of these are actually sort of fire reddened, so it could be the base of a hearth or an oven.
God, it's stiff old stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
So this would have been the hearth that our family sat round, talking about the arrival of the Romans or the state of the farm. Not much evidence of buildings in Trench 5, but some interesting finds.
That's fantastic. There's a very nice beveled edge on it as well.
It's part of a quernstone, which would have been placed on top of another one and turned. They were used for grinding corn. Trench 5 has expanded in every direction since this morning, but I'm not sure there's much to show for it.
I've stripped off a big area out here in an attempt to follow the spread of material out here, and it dies out. And so then we decided, OK, we'd go backwards to try and find the other side.
Nothing there.
Nah, well, there is something there. You see, what you've got to remember, Tony, is that this whole site is just smashed around by ridge and furrow.
Well, so, this is medieval ploughing?
Yeah. You see, the sequence is a big furrow over there, and then here, where the main rubble spread is the ridge, and then it comes down here into the furrow. And this, of course, is where the front of the building we would expect it to be.
So that's why this rubble is in this long, thin shape. It doesn't mean that the building looked like that, it's just that we've lost the sides of it.
Yeah, it could well be. We might just have survival under the ridges and we've lost the rest.
So, Mick, have we got a building or have we not?
Well, we might have.
Look, you see this spread of material here? We think that there is a good possibility that at right angles we might have a partition to that main wall.
So we've ended up with a load of rubble in the ground and a bit of stuff there that might be a partition, and that's all that we can say about whether or not we've got a building.
Yeah, but we have one card to play with the remaining time, haven't we?
What's that?
We do. That is to extend the trench in that direction to see whether we can find the end of the building over there and possibly a return underneath the ridge over there.
Well, it's 10 to 1 now.
Yeah.
Lunch and then the final throw?
Yep. So that sounds a good plan.
Medieval farms consisted of long, thin strips heavily ploughed into high ridges and deep furrows. Crops were planted on top of the ridges. The furrows must have cut through our archaeology. The effect on the land was so dramatic that you can still see the lines of ridge and furrow in our geophys. The final throw is underway in Trench 5 and things are looking up.
There are big stones all the way through there, and that is on exactly the same alignment as that set of stones coming through here.
Stuart's been drawing together his observations.
Having an absolute field day, literally, with this. I mean, what is absolutely staggering about this field is, can you see these old field boundaries? They're very different to the modern ones. Can you see how that axis is parallel to this one here? And how that one, it goes through there, respects the alignment of that group of paddocks. Now, what this suggests to me quite strongly is that these are the same boundaries that were laid out in the Iron Age and the Roman period, and they've survived right through to the present day. If you look at the wider picture, the complex we've got is not going to be the only one. There'll be others. They're part of a whole network of long boundaries which carve up this landscape, this strip of good agricultural ground we've got between the Highland to the east, the Cotswold edge, and the River Severn out here.
You're only just a little bit below the modern plough saw when you look at it.
Yeah.
And the medieval would have been probably up somewhere about here.
Yeah.
Eddie Price has been excavating his farm at Froster Court for over 30 years and is used to making sense of the patchy archaeology preserved in the ridges of the medieval ploughing.
Can you see any internal detail? Because we keep looking at it, you know. And
you've obviously got a gravelish floor.
Right.
And fallen roof tile, suggesting you're on a building which is roofed anyway.
Yeah.
Your quern stone and the pottery finds suggest you could be domestic.
Yeah.
But
you think more like a farm building?
But more like a farm workers building or something of that nature, probably.
So how different was life on the Roman farm in the 3rd and 4th centuries from the life led by the Romano-Brits in the 1st century AD? And the way that the Iron Age farmers who enjoyed their horse barbecue lived their lives in the last centuries BC. Mick, could it be that the people living here in Iron Age times were various generations of just one family?
I think that's very likely. I mean, you tend to see a lot of sites on the geophysics and a lot of stuff in the ground. I think there's lots of people. But it's actually probably the same extended family, quite a big family, just hopping around the landscape and eventually ending up, of course, in the medieval village over there.
Sure. So, Jane, if this is all one extended family, what story can we tell from your finds?
Well, we're starting in Kerry's Trench. We're up in the middle to late Iron Age. We're talking around 1st century BC here.
It's pretty rough stuff, isn't it?
It's very rough stuff. It's come from across the Severn, typical Iron Age, not sophisticated at all.
Things have changed, haven't they, by the time we get to Phil's Trench?
We've jumped on quite a lot now, nearly a century, 50 years to a century. We're still using the same technology, the same handmade traditions. This is his very large pot he had set in the ground. But we're suddenly beginning to see evidence of Roman occupation.
So are we before the Roman conquest here and they're getting bits of Roman goods, or are we actually after the Roman conquest.
We're after the conquest,
Right,
but we're
right.
still native in our habits and our
Right,
traditions.
right.
The stuff from Bridget's trench is completely different, isn't it?
A completely different story, very Roman. We're getting exotica, we're getting imports from Spain, amphora, we're getting the fine tablewares, we're getting imports from Dorset, and we're getting all the local wares developing.
What sort of date are we there? Second
We're
and
into the
third?
second century on this one,
Yeah.
and moving into second and third on this one.
Clearly they've got a lot of international trade going on, but they're also getting pottery by presumably going down to the market, buying the
Yes.
pottery and what they can put in it. So they're part of a proper market economy.
And then in Phil's second trench, we've got all these lovely big chunks.
We have. We're definitely into the third century here. Very nice spouts from a mortarium for grinding material.
I don't understand. Where is it?
Where is it? Huge big bowl, studded with little grits.
It's for making pesto,
for making-
Tony, that's what it's for. You put your olive oil and your basil and your pine nuts in, grind them all round and pour them out onto your salad.
Exactly.
It's very bourgeois. It's funny, when we first came here, what I wanted to find was the Roman building. But what's interesting me now is the idea of all these generations of the same family in the Iron Age living in this one field. Great stuff. So our story begins in the 2nd century BC with our Iron Age farmers living a peaceful Iron Age existence in the shadow of the hill fort at Haresfield. Around 50 BC, they upgrade to a new roundhouse and witness the drama of the Roman invasion unfold around them. But how does our story end? Our last throw of the dice in our quest for the Roman building was the extension of Phil's trench over here. How do you reckon you did?
I think we've done really well. We haven't found you a villa, but I think we've got a cracking story out of this, haven't we?
I think it's absolutely amazing.
Talk me
I
through
mean,
it then.
what we're actually standing in is the yard of a Roman farm. And the sort of activities that were going on in that yard include metalworking. Look, we've got this lovely little fire-reddened furnace base. And the nice thing about it is that we've actually got some metalworking slag.
All right, this is the yard, but where's the farm?
The farm starts here. This wall here is actually the boundary of the farmyard. And I think what's happening is that they're actually throwing all their refuse on the other side, because on that side of the wall we had masses and masses of pottery. On this side, absolutely nothing. Now, if you come onto here, we've actually got the first of our buildings. We've got the foundations going along here, and they turn round here and come back. So in fact, we actually had the building in the trench all along, but we just hadn't cleaned up enough to be able to see where it was. The beauty of it is we've actually got another building, and the other building is out here. We've actually got a foundation that comes along here. It's missing here because of the furrow, the medieval furrow. Here is the ridge, and we've got a bit of the foundation, and it carries on through there. That's one side. The other side is in here, and look, there is the base of that foundation. So we've got a large building here facing out onto the yard, and a much smaller building also facing out onto the yard.
Finally, we're able to piece together an impression of our Roman farm. The outbuildings could have housed the blacksmith who used the furnace. The farmhouse would have been a timber construction. Our Romano Brits had made it, but not quite enough to be able to afford the grand villa, although they still had painted plaster, a mosaic floor, and the latest sandstone roofing tiles. In 3 days, we've caught a glimpse of 600 years of an ordinary Iron Age farming family living through extraordinary times. This is Ffrith in North Wales. It's a small village of about 400 people with a main street, about 3 other streets, no shops and 2 pubs. So they've got their priorities right here. Anyway, back in the 1960s, in the back garden of this house and a few other houses down the street, some local archaeologists dug some trenches. Come on, this way. Underneath that concrete and under that glass house, they discovered a series of walls and some bits of pot and tile and some Roman coins, and they thought they'd got a Roman bathhouse. But is it? And if so, what's it doing here? Time Team have got just 3 days to find out. Ffrith is here in North Wales, just across the border from Chester, the centre of Roman occupation in the northwest. People have been finding little Roman bits and bobs here for centuries, but the reason that the local archaeologists want us to dig here is because they think this is really special and it's never been properly excavated. Harry, have you any idea how important your garden actually is?
No idea at all. I just believe there's some Roman walls underneath and that's about it, really.
What have we got?
Well, we've got a collection, as Harry says, of Roman walls. So excavations carried out here in the 60s, and we found various plans which show possibly some rectangular buildings, possibly a circular building, possibly a building with an apse on it, a semicircular projection on one side. But the fact of the matter is, we don't really know what the building is.
What's that look like to you, Mick?
Well, it's been suggested it's a bathhouse, but I think the problem is all the plans are different. And really, if we're going to understand it, we ought to re-excavate it and see what it looks like in the ground.
Is that good archaeology, to re-dig something that someone's already dug?
Yes, in this case, where we're trying to reinterpret this building, we're trying to work out what this might be, I think it's a very good case for going back to these trenches and looking again, seeing what we can find.
What's your priority for this morning?
Well, the first thing is to actually check any records that we got and to actually try and survey in where the walls are supposed to be, so that we actually know where to put our trenches. I've got a sneaking feeling it's going to be under the greenhouse myself.
Harry, do you love your greenhouse and your concrete and your lawn?
I've got a feeling that I did love my greenhouse, my grass and my concrete. I think it's going to go.
Soon there'll be no more. Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The evidence from the 60s is very strong. These are all walls which they found. When they joined the dots, they came up with this shape, which resembles the layout of Roman bathhouses found elsewhere in the country. We plan to look for these walls. Then we'll try to find other sections of wall to see if the dots are all joined correctly. If they are, then we've got a bathhouse here. Our first problem, though, is working out exactly where the walls are.
Your wall should be, if we take a straight line through that one there.
It's going to be best off buildings.
And a straight line coming through there. Where they intersect.
That's coming to about there, isn't it?
So, in other words, that Roman wall, well, at least it's not underneath your greenhouse. It looks like it's underneath your path.
Can you not get rid of the greenhouse anyway?
Well, we can do that as well. we can do that as well. But you don't mind the path coming up?
Not at all, no.
We'll give you a quote on a greenhouse.
That's fair.
This is where we'll dig in Harry's. Across the fence in another garden, there are two more important walls. This long one and this one in the corner. Taken together, they look like they're curving.
There you go.
We're beginning to dismantle Harry's garden. It's taking a bit of time because of the path and the stuff around it.
Then out comes the sun again, look. Nice now, isn't it?
Next door, Phil's moving a bit faster. He just had grass to go through.
Oh! Big old stone again there, look.
I think you're in danger of having a wall there, Phil.
Danger?
The fence between the two gardens just has to go. It'll be easier to work without it. The village itself runs north-south, and the main street follows the line of Offa's Dyke. The dyke, built in the 8th century, is now under these houses. Behind them is the village playing field. It was scheduled as an ancient monument because Roman material was found along the edges. The authorities have given us permission to have a look at it. Well, it looks as though we've got some people working here already.
Well, somebody started 20 years ago. They've already done the geophys.
Oh, crikey. Is it any good, though, John?
Well, it's rather crude. I mean, they've actually presented the results by stippling with a pen. It was pre-computers.
Yeah.
Can you see anything on it?
Well, look, these thicker dots are presumably where they've got higher readings. It's resistance survey, so that could be stone buildings.
Can you tell anything from it?
Well, it's quite encouraging, to be honest. I mean, it suggests we need to resurvey the area.
So you've started that already?
Yeah, we're on with it.
Yeah.
What do you rate on this place?
Well, this is the biggest open space in the village, and although it's got ridge and furrow covering it, it's very shallow. It won't have destroyed much, and if John's happy that we can get good geophysics results, then it's the best place we've got.
The walls found here aren't the only evidence of Roman occupation. Hypercoarse tiles used for underfloor heating, particularly in bathhouses, have been turning up for hundreds of years. And in the 60s, they found masses of stuff, 41 boxes of it, including shed-loads of pottery. We begin to sift through the old finds for clues as to what might have been happening here. This little lot looks pretty random. Does it tell us much?
Much more than I thought it would to begin with. You see that little brooch, broken? It's just the kind of thing you might find on almost any Roman site in the country, so it wouldn't tell us anything more than that the place was Roman. But these are really important. These are bronze fittings from Roman armour, so it means there were soldiers here.
Is there anything here that tells us there was anybody else other than soldiers, though?
Well, unless they were very camp. There's all these glass beads which suggest that there was somebody wearing necklaces or jewellery, and also these bone hairpins. So I think there must have been women.
What about the rest of this stuff?
Well, of course, what brought us here was traces of buildings. I mean, that's what we know about. Now, there's a building tile which has a military legionary stamp on it, but there's also wall plaster. But rather nicely over here, we also have the remains of a bronze key. So clearly, there is a structure.
What's this little thing here?
Every time you wrote an official document or a religious document, something that was important to you, you would tie the document up with a piece of string, run it through this little box, pour wax into it, stamp your seal on it, and then bring over the lid. It's evidence for reading and writing, but possibly also of official documents, which is exactly what you might expect in an important site associated with the army.
It's pouring down now. So the incident room is suddenly very busy.
Yeah, well, it's the problem when we're actually outside.
Stuart and Henry are looking at the overall topography.
So this is a 3D map of the area.
Victor, Raysan and Sally, a Roman baths expert, are looking at what a bathhouse might have looked like.
The example we found, which is Ashstead, it's got the most similar layout, although it's half the size.
And John has now got some geophys results for the playing field.
These are results from 20 years ago. That's our area we've surveyed. Now, if you compare the two, take their results. Almost perfect match.
Very similar, aren't they?
I mean, it really is good.
Yes, it is. It must be the same anomaly that we're seeing.
You could look at that and say you've got 3 rectilinear buildings aligned to the main street there. Or it could be you've just got an outcrop of geology with ridge and furrow ploughing cutting through.
Coming through it, because you can see ridge and furrow on some of the aerial photographs, can't you?
Yes, you can feel it if you walk over it.
Yes, you can see it in the right light.
I mean, the only way to find out is to dig it.
This is where John suggests we dig. So Helen opens a trench. We hit the ridge and furrow right away, and then it starts to look very dodgy. Where John thought we might have a building, we found some stones. But what are they?
We thought that this looked like a shaped stone. What really kind of put the icing on it was it looked like this might be mortar, but the more we've cleaned it, the more that it's turned into kind of creamy mud, really.
Well, I tell you what, it doesn't look desperately Roman. It's not really squared off enough. It's not proper dressed in the way that you might expect good Roman stone to be made. It doesn't mean it's not. Oh, that just looks like a break on. That looks like an actual flaw in the stone. But there's something else much more important, really. I can't see any trace of Roman brick and tile. If you were on the site of a Roman building, you would almost certainly have quite a lot of fragments of that very obvious orange Roman brick and tile, and you've got none of that, have you?
So that could just be natural shaping.
Yeah, it's just not good enough, really.
The 2 gardens are coming along nicely.
Have you got anything yet, Matt?
Well, we've got a few random stones here, but they've still got modern bits of glass and stuff underneath them and stuff, so
keep going.
Yet at the moment, no.
Keep going, yeah. OK. Getting like the sun, isn't it? Oh, that looks a bit better, Phil. That looks like we've got on here, doesn't it?
Well, it is what you got on there, Mick.
That bit there, look, it's that curved bit of wall, isn't it?
Do you want to see what it looked like in the 60s?
Cool, dear.
Don't get it wet.
Here we are, yeah.
Look, it's exactly, we can marry this up precisely. I mean, there's this stone here, which is the long one in the middle, and there's these two here with this crack running between them, which are the two where the hand shovel is. We can actually say with some degree of certainty that that photograph was taken exactly where you're standing.
Right.
What we've got is exactly what they got.
So what do you want to do now?
We want to dig a trench over that side of the path, because from what we know, in the 60s they stopped here.
Right.
That over there is brand spanking new virgin ground, never been dug before. And that will answer the question of all this rubble. It will give us a continuation of the wall. It will also give us the inside of the building, and also it will give us a brand spanking new set of finds.
So we'll have the old wheelbarrows going up and down there, and then you'll put in another trench here somewhere?
That's right, yeah,
and then
just
going back
run it parallel.
This way. Would you say at the moment that this looks like an apse?
No, I don't think we've got enough of it to say that.
But we might know more with this new trench.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know. It'd have to be butted onto something to be an apse, and we've no evidence of that at all at the moment.
For a very simple trench, it will solve a lot of our problems.
Yeah.
This is the wall Phil's found. In the 60s, another wall was found in this corner. Phil's new trench will provide the missing link between the two. If this lines up, we'll either have a circular building or one with an apse, a semicircular projection on one side. Any finds associated with it will give us a date for this wall. At the moment, we've no way of even knowing whether it's Roman or not. So, OK, the Roman army might have been here, but why here?
There are a number of possibilities. First of all, Ffrith is actually on the line of the main Roman road, which runs from the legionary fortress at Chester over there, down through the centre and up through this valley, on into central Wales and eventually the west coast. So, given the location, and it's also close to two small rivers, there's a possibility there was a roadside official lodging house or mansio where people could stay overnight and get changes of horses and vehicles. The other possibility is that there are extensive lead deposits in the area.
So basically the Romans had come here to plunder the raw materials?
If you like to put it that way, yes. Lead, of course, was important for all the pipes they would have needed for the water mains inside the legionary fortress, lining and baths and so forth.
Out in the playing field, Helen's opened a very large trench, but has very little to show for it.
We were thinking, were we coming down onto something structural or not?
It looks horribly natural. When I saw it at first, I thought, well, I wonder if this is not river gravel or even glacial gravel or
it's
rubble.
It's very
or something.
loose and kind of churned up, isn't it?
Yeah.
It looks like something you might quarry out to build a road.
Well, exactly.
But we did have a bit of luck with some Roman finds.
Yeah.
Well, from here?
Yeah, from the top layers.
That's a star one.
That's your star piece of Roman.
But this was from very much higher up. This is from more like the ridge and furrow.
See, I'd have thought that was probably flower pot.
Well, yeah, it crossed my mind, but Guy identified it as good Roman stuff.
Right.
And then we got a few bits of modern brick and tile.
Yeah.
And here we are, a nice piece of opus signinum. Quite a big bit, really.
Right.
You can see all the flecks in it.
Yeah. But I mean, one piece of opus signinum doesn't make a Roman site.
No,
does it?
it's not in context at all. So it could have been brought in from somewhere else in the village, and we already know that there's opus signinum floors and there's heating systems and things.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we're very much further on.
These finds are the first evidence found by us of Roman occupation here. But the shortage of finds is very worrying. We'd expected more by this stage.
So are we really much further on?
Time to hit the pub. Nightmare weather.
It was terrible. Bridge and I thought we wouldn't be able to get to see anything at all, but because it was so kind of smeary and muddy. But once we got underneath the ridge and furrow, we were kind of going for this thing that could have been a building or could have been geological. It was this really clear kind of loose, hardcore stuff, which might have been natural, so not really pushing our knowledge forward much.
So what's you going to do about it?
Well, we're going to try and dig a sondage at one end of the trench.
Like a little inspection trench?
Yeah, to see if there's anything underneath that could actually be real archaeology.
And what about you? At least we've got our round Roman building.
Well, I'm not really sure that we have. I mean, I'm not really sure that it's round.
You mean it's straight?
Well, I'm not sure about that either. I mean...
What is it? Wiggly?
That's a very fair assumption. Look, at the moment, I simply don't know. It's going on. That's the prime thing. It is actually going on. Trust me.
How much have you had to drink?
Not enough!
So we came here because we got this magnificent round building. Now we discovered it's possibly not round, possibly not straight, could be wiggly, but at least it's going on.
Yes!
So what is it? We'll find out tomorrow. What was all that about then?
I don't know, just keep drinking, you know.
Yesterday evening, Mick and I had this bizarre conversation in the pub with Phil, where we both assumed he'd been drinking too much crazy juice, because we were trying to press him about the wall in this garden, about whether it's curved, about whether it's straight. He said it might be wavy, but now this is the extension, isn't it?
Yeah, this one here, yeah.
We've dug this new extension to try and find the logic of the wall. Phil, your wall, straight, curved or what?
I told you in the pub last night, Tony. I mean, I really did, and you don't believe me. It really is a bit of both. I mean, look, you can see on this printout, look, it's straight through there, and then it does actually go into a bit of a curve.
Yeah.
And you can actually see that on the ground. This bit here is straight,
yeah.
And then when it gets beyond that bucket, it does actually begin to curve.
The chap that dug this before had a piece of wall in the corner of the garden over here, didn't he?
Exactly. He was saying the whole thing was circular, and there was just like a little bit of the circle in that corner.
But if we've now got this wall across here, that can't connect with that, obviously, can it?
No, it clearly can't do that.
Yeah.
Funny old thing, isn't it?
Yeah. It's very peculiar. I mean, it doesn't look very much like a Roman bathhouse to me.
There's no demolition rubble. You'd expect roofing tile,
that's right,
plaster. You'd expect loads of stuff.
I mean, that wall there, the way it's built at the moment, looks as if it might be the base of a field wall between a couple of fields. And it could be medieval or later, couldn't it?
That's great. We came here because we thought we had a site of possible national significance, a Roman bathhouse. And now you're saying it could be a wall round a field.
That's what that looks like to me.
What have we got in the next stretch over here? Matt's just next door to Phil, but we've no idea if anything in his trench is related in any way to anything in Phil's.
That's looking like proper archaeology now.
Yeah, I think we've got undisturbed Roman wall there and undisturbed Roman floors at the bottom there.
Yeah, undisturbed Roman, but it's undisturbed Roman only since the mid-1960s when they dug it up last time.
Yeah, I guess.
Have you nothing new at all?
Well, over on that side of our little fence line there, we're not getting all this modern stuff, so I think the 60s trench probably ended about where that fence is. Right. And on that side, we've got proper kosher, untouched Roman building.
Not only Roman, but Jewish. So is this finished?
No, we've got a lot more to do. We're going to take out the balk and the fence, join the two up, and then keep cleaning it.
Right. Come on. It's just weird, isn't it? Why did we make the mistake of assuming that this was a Roman bathhouse? Mick and I were just about to film getting into the car, as we do, and he walked round the back of it, and he looked down, and he went, blimey, and burst out laughing. He's rushed off to get Phil. Come on, show him.
What's this?
Don't you think this line of stones here is very similar to what you've got in there? It's probably the same line.
Ooh.
In other words, whatever that wall is, it's not going anywhere else, but it's coming down here.
It does line up, does it?
Well, we need to get Henry in, don't we, to ask him to look at it. Look, if you stand here, look, you can see the shed.
Hey?
If you stand over here, you can see the corner of the shed, look. So it must be going under this garage, mustn't it? Come out under the fence.
If he's right, it's not a bathhouse, it's a wall at least 15 metres long.
And it looks more like, again, like as if it's a field wall, doesn't it?
Who done it?
That's sort of here before the houses are put here.
Don't curve either, does it?
No, it doesn't. So we'll get Henry to plot it in relation to that and see what it looks like.
And we'll get back to what we were supposed to be doing. Come on.
Cup of tea. I'll see you later.
The wall that Mick tripped over is here. It looks like it lines up with Phil's here. Now the whole thing looks even less like a bathhouse wall. So, Mick, no bathhouse.
No, it doesn't look like it, does it? I mean, there's none of the characteristic features, you know, plasterwork, hypercourse tiles, anything like that you'd expect to get.
What do we do with this extension to the wall, if it is one?
I think we'll pop a little trench in anywhere and see if it's related to any Roman structures, you know. We don't need to dig a lot to demonstrate that.
But wouldn't it be on an old map if it's medieval?
Well, yes, I wondered about that. But you see, there isn't a tithe map for the area. The tithe map's usually drawn about 1840.
Yeah.
And normally they show the situation before all the villages come in, before roads are laid out. But there isn't one for this area. So we don't have an early map that might show it. It's just, you know, unfortunate.
Stuart, major time team crisis. The bathhouse isn't a bathhouse.
Why shouldn't that surprise us after all these years?
Is there anything about this place that we actually do know?
Well, there is. I've been looking at some excavations which were done just where you've driven in, on Offa's Dyke. There was some done in the 20s and some done fairly recently, which were properly recorded. That's the important bit. And what they showed, you can see in the photograph here, that's where the trench was cut, that Offa's Dyke, which was built in the late 8th century.
Something like that, yeah.
It was built almost entirely of redeposited Roman material, pottery, finds, brooches, all this sort of thing. This is the original ground surface. Offa's Dyke, this has got all this redeposited Roman material in it.
Yeah.
Where did it come from? We know elsewhere that Offa's Dyke's got a ditch on that side.
Is this where the road is now?
Yeah, the road would take up about that much there. So I think what's happening is they're digging all this material out of here, popping it up there. So do we have Roman activity over here?
So you think they've dug through a Roman settlement or something here when they're actually digging the ditch for the dyke?
Whether it's a settlement is another issue. It could be rubbish pits, could be waste, but it's definitely Roman.
Whatever it is, how does it help us?
What we need to be doing is looking on this side of the road over here, and we've got a piece of ground in there which is big enough to get into. It's got chickens in it. That's big enough to have a look at. Let's have a pop in there.
So far, we've been digging up here to the north. This is the chicken run Stuart's talking about at the southern end of the village. It's just opposite the spot where Roman material was found in the 1920s. So we pop a trench into the middle of that area. We open up the wall that Mick tripped over. It does seem to line up with Phil's and is on the same height. In the extension to Phil's trench, he's found the wall, but he's also found this ditch. Inside the ditch, we're coming across a range of good finds, and they're all Roman.
Piece of glass, could be Roman.
Oh, I'm sure it is actually. Look at that, you see the little projection on the side?
Yes.
And then the thinness of the glass, and also, I think you can make out some little air bubbles in it, very characteristic of Roman glass. What else?
And the star exhibit, a Roman brooch.
Oh yes, that's P-shaped, a P-shaped brooch. There should be another one of these on this side. So there's a gap down the middle. They join at the bottom with a tail here. But it is an unusual type of brooch, and I think it probably belongs to the late 2nd century and on into the 3rd.
Okay.
These finds give us some relief, but they date the ditch in Phil's trench. The wall is still a mystery. This gives Phil a bit of a problem.
I'm absolutely happy in my own mind that that's Roman. I don't know quite...
The ditch is Roman, but how can he get a date for the wall?
Clean up the section. Yeah. I've just had a thought.
I thought you'd gone pensive. It's usually a bad sign with you, isn't it?
It's just struck me.
Go on.
I wonder if we went through there, whether we'd find the wall running over that ditch.
Because the angle's different, isn't it? So somewhere over there, the alignment of that ditch like that is going to meet the alignment of that wall like that, about where the spade is, in fact, isn't it? That'd be better, wouldn't it, than trying to perhaps clean it all up and not quite get the relationship. That would be better still.
It means shifting a lot more muck.
Yeah, but isn't it better to invest the time in that and get the answer rather than invest the same time in cleaning it up and possibly not getting the answer?
It's the right way to do it.
It is, it is.
So digging here might give us a point where this wall and this ditch cross. That way we'll be able to tell if the wall's Roman or if it comes after the Roman period. It's funny, 35 years ago, a group of archaeologists came here, they dug a load of trenches, got some finds, and then joined the dots together and conjectured that there was a Roman bathhouse here. And all these years later, we're doing exactly the same thing, digging trenches, finding stuff, creating pictures. The only difference is that the picture that we're creating is likely to be very different from the one that the earlier archaeologists did. We can confirm some of their findings, like this wall. But this one tears their theory of a bathhouse apart. And our investigation of the wider village is getting us nowhere. In the playing field, the sondage produced nothing. We're down to the natural. Down in the chicken run, Helen's got a few finds, but nothing much.
What do you think?
Yeah, that's a piece of Roman mortarium, the round mixing bowl with grits in the bottom. Yeah, excellent.
So that's the rim?
Yeah, that's the rim. You see the grits beginning to show through the dirt there.
Oh yes, those little white flecks.
Yeah.
But there's no evidence of any structures down here. This is all very worrying. In the north of the village, we're also having problems. The wall Mick tripped over isn't Roman. It's sitting on top of Victorian bricks. In Matt's trench, he's very unsure about what he's got.
It looks like mortar or something. I don't know. Do you want to have a look at that?
That looks much more like a very degraded wall plaster or something, a packing into perhaps a timber building or something with all the timber's gone, or they've destroyed it in the 1967 excavation. But it doesn't have anything to do with that massive great stone wall, does it? I don't believe that's Roman for 1 minute. It's much too badly built, and I can't see a relationship between the two. Apart from the flooring, have you got any signs of anything structural there?
Well, it looks like I've got this dark patch here coming like that. That's clearly been cut into this.
It's small though, isn't it?
It is quite small, yeah. Maybe it could. I mean, it could be the end of a beam or something like that. A small beam, post hole or something like that, maybe.
And now Phil's having some second thoughts.
Well, what do you think of that? It's turning again, isn't it? And we thought it was going to come through, somewhere like that. And what's it doing? Coming back like that. So, you wouldn't build a wall that close to the edge of the ditch, would you?
No, it'd collapse into the ditch, wouldn't it?
That's right. But if the ditch was already filled up, then you could build the wall. You wouldn't even know the ditch was there.
That's right.
In other words, the wall would have to be later. Might not be...
His wall isn't Roman either.
...in mind, anyway.
Because the ditch in Phil's trench is full of Roman material and the wall is right beside it, the wall must have been built sometime after the ditch filled up. So it's much later than Roman. So we've found this wall of Phil's, this of Matt's, and this where Mick tripped over. None of them are Roman. And we're running out of places we can actually dig. There's only one wall left from the 60s dig, and it's here, just outside Harry's garden. After this, we're on our own.
Hello, Chris. I think you've got some plans for me, have you?
Yeah, we've been trying to marry up these plans from the 60s excavation with the modern ordnance survey map here.
There's a quiet sense of desperation settling in. Our only hope of finding a Roman building may now lie beneath these Victorian bricks. Well, with one possible exception. There's only one part of the village we haven't touched yet. In front of the pub. Desperate times call for desperate measures.
What we've got is this sort of rectilinear arrangement.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
There's reported Roman finds just over the road there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a positive result. I think we ought to
pop a hole in and have a look.
Which is what we do. And pretty soon, there's quite a crowd around having a look. Over in his new trench, Phil seems to be getting somewhere.
Well, that's solid enough, isn't it?
That is, isn't it?
I'd say you've got a good one there.
Looks like a mortar floor.
It does, doesn't it? It's nice and thick, isn't it?
And look, I was going to say that when I dug down in that hole there, it's still carrying on down. But
and this is a wall. God. And that's a mortared wall.
Exactly. Look, there's lovely bits of mortar in there, mortar there, all the way along. And it's still
nice.
running.
It's going on under my feet here. Does that relate to this plan, then, that we were looking at before, where we've got this little stub of wall coming in here? Do you think that's what it is?
Well, I think it'll have to be, won't it? Gotta be.
At last, something decent for us to pursue tomorrow. Time to try out the second pub in the village. Harry? Tracy, if anybody deserves a drink, it's you two after what we've done to your garden. Wait, have you seen this? This is our star find so far. It's a dice, like a Snakes and Ladders dice, that has not been thrown for 1,800 years. Mind you, if we'd been chucking it, given our luck over the last couple of days, what would we have got? Ones and twos?
Oh, come on, Tony. At least 2s and 3s, I would have thought, you know.
And what about day 3? What do we get?
6.
It's going to be 6. I'll let you know tomorrow.
Oh, come on!
Day 3 and Mick and Phil are attempting to reach new heights.
I don't usually see the world from up here, Mick.
No, well, I know that. It's a special treat for you because it's your birthday.
It's not my birthday.
Well, it's still a special treat for you.
It is.
Last night, Phil hit one of these walls. He now needs to extend his trench, but doesn't know which direction he should take. Has he hit this wall or this one?
Yeah, that.
Ooh.
Yeah?
Oh, well, no, just looking. Just looking.
Yeah.
That isn't a return on that wall, is it?
On the right?
No. Going back on the left. Who have we got down there?
Matt? Hello? Can you just come in with your trowel and point a bit for us?
Now then, come forward towards the wall. Now, no. Outside edge of the wall, that's it. Follow backwards. Back, stop. Does that return away from you there?
Through here?
Yes.
What's going on? By your right hand, Matt, where your right hand is in your trowel, does it actually go on towards the garage then?
Yep, there it is there. Can you see the white there?
All right, well, that's my theory, scuppered
Still.
then.
And we've learned not to trust this, haven't we? I mean, it might go straight on, which is what he seems to be implying.
Yeah, but, you know, I mean, it does look as though, at the minute, the best money is that that wall, is that right-hand wall is the one that we've found.
Yeah.
So Phil thinks he's got this wall. He now needs to dig on this side of it to see if there's a floor here. There might be, given the shape of the adjoining walls. If there is a floor, we might just be able to get a date for the wall.
So, this actually runs up to those sandstone blocks. We don't know whether it goes beyond it, but...
Right, you got it. Oh, we have got it. Probably.
Do that again. That's the first time I've actually seen... I've never seen you move dirt before, Henry.
Really? I don't know about my trowel, is that right?
I suppose one must actually demonstrate to you how it's done, but you'll get there eventually.
The pub trench has delivered nothing. The geophysics we saw may well have been buildings from the 19th century. All we're left with is a pipe. And Harry's garden's beginning to look like it might not have much in it either. But Stuart, as always, still holds out hope.
I suppose you're wondering why I'm hijacking you.
Yes. Great surprise. Pleasant, but great surprise. I mean, I must confess, since we've been here, I can't really see where we are geographically.
No.
You know? I mean, we're not that far from Chester, and yet Chester's in the middle of a great flat plain.
Yeah, it actually seems miles away because you're in Wales as well.
Yeah.
I climbed up these hills yesterday on foot and it just about wiped me out.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Whatever type of settlement or activity we've got down in this village here,
yeah,
part of the key to it is where it sits in these two valleys that come together.
Where do those valleys go to?
Well, this valley up here heads north, eventually heads up towards Flint. And we know there's a big Roman industrial site at Painter Farm in Flint. This valley up here to the west, eventually...
That's the one with the railway viaduct at the bottom?
That's the one there, yeah. The valley heads due west.
Yeah.
And we know quite a few, about a day's march or so in military Roman terms, there is a Roman fort in that direction.
Ah, right.
And 15 miles in that direction is the big legionary base at Chester.
At Chester itself.
I think Chester is the key to what's going on down here.
But it'd be useful to have some sort of supply base, wouldn't it? You could send stuff off in different directions.
Right, yeah. So you've got a crossing and you've got access through these steep valleys and across the terrain. But what else have you got here? I mean, why are they here? And I think in a way being up in the helicopter helps us, because when you're down in the gardens it's quite hard for you to see.
Yeah.
But up on the far side, can you see all those quarry faces?
Oh, yeah.
That's all limestone that's been quarried away in the 19th century.
Oh, right.
Huge, great...
What's this carboniferous limestone?
That's a huge, great blob of limestone there. There's a source for making lime here. And
which you'd need in building work in places like Chester, presumably. Yeah.
You're building this massive, great fortress in Chester.
Yeah.
Huge, great place.
With all the stone buildings with mortar and everything,
People forget nothing stands up if you don't put mortar in it.
Put mortar in it, exactly.
You need shed loads of limestone.
Yeah.
And this hill, it's the nearest source of limestone to Chester. It's a day's cart from here to Chester. That's why this Roman settlement down here is here. It's not a settlement, it's a mining community.
If Stuart's right, the settlement here might not necessarily have been made of stone. It may well have been more transient, more like a series of temporary buildings. By accident rather than design, we seem to have turned the archaeology of this place on its head.
Yes, we do rather, don't we? Parts of the site that were previously interpreted as a bathhouse now no longer seem to be a bathhouse, and may not even be Roman.
I don't have a problem with there being a bathhouse here. I mean, that's exactly what you might expect on an official building. There's all the records from the 1960s excavations of tiles associated with a bathhouse. We just happen not to be on it.
But aren't you just making the same kind of assumption that the archaeologists made in the 1960s? Just because there's a hypercaust here,
No.
that doesn't necessarily mean we've got a bathhouse, does it?
I didn't say it has to be a bathhouse.
Well, it sounded pretty much like it to me.
No, I think it's a possibility there's a bathhouse here, and I think that's quite likely given the description of the hypercaust tiles, which you might well expect.
What does the antiquarian actually say?
Near Hope, while I was writing this, a gardener digging somewhat deeper than ordinary discovered a very ancient work.
Guy, he doesn't say this place, he says near Hope.
Look, there was no Ffrith at that point. He didn't have the word to use. We are very close to Hope.
Yeah, there must be 100 places that are very close to Hope.
What, up on that hill?
Well, yeah,
no,
why
down
not?
here, this is where you have buildings. So this is one of the most likely candidates, and Roman buildings have been found
Oh,
here.
hello, suddenly it's one of the most likely candidates.
What's the difference?
You're doing exactly the same thing as them.
No, I'm not, because...
You are, of all of us, you are the person who says you can't make the kind of assumptions that archaeologists always make. Just because people have said something in the past, you don't just kind of dig and perpetuate this myth, and yet you seem to be doing exactly the same thing.
No, I'm not doing that. We've got the evidence here that they found a Roman site, which they thought was baths. We've got hypercaust tiles found on the site. What we have shown is that the people in the 1960s who took this material then found a couple of big hefty stone walls, assumed that was a bathhouse, which when we took one look at it, we realised that was a totally implausible association of the artefactual evidence, the documentary evidence, and the structure, which are completely separate.
Outside, Phil is at last making real progress with his stone wall.
Ah, Mick.
Yeah?
Come and have a look at this. I've been taking out all this brick rubble, which must be what they must have shifted in the 60s.
Yeah.
And look, in the side of their trench, look what I've got. Look, this beautiful mortar floor.
Oh, yeah. So it must be under this lump in the corner here, then?
Well, yeah, I mean, it probably goes all the way that way.
A room with a proper plaster floor in it, then?
Well, exactly. I mean, that unquestionably is in the building.
Yeah.
Now, the big question, of course, is whether or not this wall is the outside of the building or whether it's an internal partition.
Yeah.
What do you make of it, Chris?
Yes, I think we're certainly inside a fairly substantial Roman building here.
I told Tony we were going to throw a 6 today.
You're right.
I wonder if we shouldn't have this block out here, Phil, with the machine to give you a bit more room to work there.
I reckon if we're going to move that at all, one good bloke could do the job as just as well.
Right. You don't mean me?
He doesn't.
No.
Or indeed me.
Oh, indeed you, yes.
And I expect you to use a shovel bigger than this.
3 days in, and this is all we've got left. Matt and Phil. We open another trench close to Phil's. This is a view we don't often show you on Time Team, but it's probably the thing we see more than anything else during the 3 days. But when we came here 3 days ago, we thought that we were going to get a Roman bathhouse, and all we've got somewhere underneath Phil is that rather manky old wall.
Yeah.
You must be very frustrated.
Yeah, I think I am, because, you know, we've sort of worked our way through, you know, where to dig and what to look for and what evidence we've got and so on, and we still don't have a lot to show for it, really. But we're now in the area where, you know, most of the structures that have been recorded in the past have turned up. I mean, under this building here, for example, there was a hypercore system found, or probably under this building, somewhere in this area. And then over the back, where that house is number 1 on the end there, is where they found a lot of hypercourse tiles and a lot of finds, including glass and stuff like that. Plus, of course, you know, what we originally came to look at, which is back where Phil is. So somewhere in the middle of those 3 bits seem to be the logic of this trench here.
OK, so after 3 days, we're focusing down on an area about 7 metres from where we started. What happens if we don't find anything here?
Well, we may not do. We may not do. I mean, don't build your hopes up, because you see where Phil is there, it's sort of dropping away from him. It's quite likely, when they built all these buildings, that they planed it all off. It may be that the material we've got in the finds that people have hung on to and the museum's got is all that's left, because the rest of it's been removed. That's why we've put this trench in here through this gravel, because there's not much on the geophysics in there. Part of the reason is that we may have the bottoms of features that show us that it has been planed off.
So it's fingers crossed time.
Yeah, but, you know, it's the process of sort of, you know, trying to find out what's there.
3 days ago, this was our starting point. A map of stone walls joined together by archaeologists and historians in a way that suggested a very big bath complex in this area. We now know that they were wrong. Most of these walls weren't even Roman, except for this one. But then, just when we thought that was it... Bridge, things starting to come together in your trench?
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. Look, we've got a Roman ditch coming up here.
Yeah.
Just uncover what looks like a Roman post hole, and the piece de resistance is this piece of daub.
Daub as in wattle and daub?
Yeah.
So where would the wattle have gone?
2 pieces would have fitted just in there.
It is extraordinary how things always start to come together towards the end of day 3. And it being day 3, we've got, as usual, 3/4 of the local population. But what's so strange is that in addition to all the things that we've got in Bridget's trench, in Matt's trench, we've got something similar. What have you got for us?
Well, we're down on the bottom clay floor here, and if you look really carefully, you can see these circular, evenly spaced stains, and that's where wooden stakes would have been, and they'd have held up a small wall, a partition wall, or something like that.
So there is Roman here. It's just much more ephemeral than we thought it would be. It's wattle and daub and mud and post holes. It's not made of stone. The post holes in this trench are Roman, and they explain why we haven't found much. It's all gone. What we're left with is one wall and some floor.
Phil, I've seen loads of walls on this dig, but that is the only one I'd label as Roman.
I know, it's a cracker, isn't it?
It's terrific.
Absolutely cracker. And I mean, we got the inside and the outside, but the really nice thing, what do you think of that? I reckon that's a tessera.
You know what, I think you're right. You've got the flat surface on the top here. You've got the mortar around these sides here. But I do think it's been broken off on that side, so it should really be square like that. But I don't think I can recreate a brilliant mythological scene on a mosaic pavement out of that.
If that is a tessera, it means absolutely cast iron. We got a mosaic floor in this building.
No, it doesn't. It means we've got a tessellated pavement, probably of one colour, like down a corridor.
OK, that to me is a mosaic.
Well, yeah, but you don't get brightly coloured mosaics usually in a military context, but I would expect this kind of thing in a slightly higher status building with somebody who wants to be comfortable. And I think that fits with a lot of the stuff we've got here. Those stories about the baths or heated rooms here, I think that does fit with it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Helen, 3 days in sunny North Wales. What have you come up with?
Me, I've been in charge of finding nothing. I've had the most important places in the village, the scheduled ancient monuments. I found nothing in one and I found nothing in the other. So I've been sent to the chicken run, and there I did finally manage to find something. So I became an expert on local Roman mortaria as well as the natural.
Phil?
Oh, wow. I mean, I'm over the moon. I mean, we came looking for a bathhouse, and it's always nice to be able to put the record straight. We now know that there is no bathhouse. And then to cap it all, we've been able to confirm some of their results, which was this wonderful stone-built wing of a Roman building, tessellated floor, lovely floors. It's been, stonker, it really has.
What a great optimist you are.
I am!
What is it that we've got?
What we've got is a whole complex of buildings here. Quite what it is more difficult to interpret, because it's clearly not a Roman villa, and neither is it something like a Roman fort. Well, Stuart came up with the idea that this is actually the nearest supply of limestone to Chester. And why that's important is you need vast amounts of limestone to make lime for the mortar and the plaster and everything when you're building the permanent fort there. And you'd need a gang of labourers, basically, to do that. So we probably ought to think of this as some sort of industrial military compound of people who are producing all that material to send back over to Chester, and I quite like that idea.
It's wonderful having a quiet little conversation at the end of the day with just the 5 of us and 350 local people. Go away! This is West Sussex, one of the very first parts of Britain to be Romanised. And it's amazing how little some things have changed here over the past 2,000 years. There's still the agriculture, the rolling hills, and of course the A29, or as the Romans would have known it, Stane Street, the main road between Chichester and London. What has disappeared though is the thriving Roman settlement which would have once flanked this road, including a mansio, a Roman hotel used by the empire's officials as they travelled the country. And yet we know almost nothing about mansios or how they fitted into the wider landscape. This is a rare opportunity to shed some light on a little-known aspect of Roman life in Britain. But we'll have our work cut out. This whole site is over half a kilometre long with 300 years of Roman activity. And of course, we've got just 3 days to find out.
There's a hell of a lot of this hypercourse tile around
I mean,
here.
it is amazing. It's just diddled with it. It's absolutely everywhere.
As soon as you walk onto this field, you know there was something big, important and Roman here. The ground's littered with box tile, roof tile, high-status pottery and countless other classic examples of Roman occupation. It's no wonder that over the last century this site has been surveyed, field-walked and written about many times. But it's only been dug once, in the 1920s, when an amateur archaeologist called Samuel Winbolt identified it as the site of a station, an official complex of buildings used by the great and the good as they journeyed up and down the country. So what have we got? Is it a station? Is it a mansio? I always thought they were the same thing.
Wimbold christened it a station, but I think he had in mind like a police station, a place where some Roman troops or Roman soldiers were stationed with hostile natives outside. Today we'd probably say, well, no, it's more to do with a mansio or a hotel. So kind of a cross between a motorway service station and a medical coaching inn.
But the whole country's crossed with Roman roads, so presumably there were lots of these hotel things by the side of them. Don't we know everything that we need to know about them?
Would that were true, Tony. I mean, the problem is when we look at Roman Britain is that we understand the forts, we understand tribal towns, we've done a lot of work on Roman villas, but we know diddly squat really about what a mansio is. All we can really say here is this looks like an important site. It's got double ditches, a large enclosure, a massive area of settlement, but we just don't really understand anything about it.
So everything to play for?
Absolutely.
The mansio's the obvious first target for Geophys, but we've got a small problem. John's results are awash with potential targets.
Look at all these responses. The problem is there's so much going on, we can't actually see the detail of the buildings that were excavated.
Yeah, I mean, here's Wimbold's plan, and this is what he calls his officers' quarters. This is what we think is the mansio. He thinks that's a wall, he thinks that's a tessellated floor or mosaic. I guess the question is, we've got to find where it is.
Well, that's it. I mean, if we can't rely on the geophysics to find it, well, we can't. You've admitted that. The only way to resolve it is literally to dig it.
So our first trench will try to relocate this 1920s dig. We may disagree with Wimbold about his description of the mansio as an officer's quarters, but this classics teacher was a very good archaeologist for his time. And locking his results into the landscape and re-evaluating his work will give us a great start.
Ah! Oh, what's that?
What is it?
That's the trouble. We don't know what the quality of the floor was that Wimbold said he found. I mean, if it was a nice floor or whether it was just these broken up bits of tile.
But the archaeologists have also identified a second target. Wimbold's records describe the mansio as being surrounded by massive enclosure ditches. And Neil's keen to investigate these as soon as possible, because when it comes to getting dates for a site, ditches are an archaeologist's best friend. Hey, John, have you seen this plan this bloke drew in the 20s? He's got a huge ditch round here. You haven't come across anything like that in your geophys, have you? Oh, yeah. Yes, you have.
So look, there's the bank and ditch, the river at the top behind us.
Why not put another trench in here across the ditch? Let's see what dating's coming out of that.
Well, we can tell you exactly where to go on that.
So trench 2 goes in over the ditches.
OK, Ian, let's just take it off nice and easy, mate.
Although why anyone would want to dig 2 huge ditches to cut off a hotel from its surroundings is a mystery to me. Back in Trench 1, Phil thinks he may have just found the mansio, or at least one of its wall foundations cut into the bedrock.
I mean, I wonder, as a first starter for 10, whether this isn't actually going to be the natural bedrock. In which case, our building, and I think we can start to talk about a building because there's just so much demolition rubble, there's all tile, bits of tiles and what have you. That's in there. The other thing I like about it, that edge, look at it, it's exactly at 90 degrees to the Roman road.
Yeah.
I like the look of that.
But it's a bit early to break out the champagne. We may have our first piece of mansio, but we don't know what piece it is or how it might help John decipher his abundant geophys results. To be honest, we don't even know which part of Wimbold's excavation this is. Only time and a lot more digging will tell how this small wall line fits into the bigger picture of Roman Alfoldine, a settlement that stretched along both sides of Stane Street. A lot of what we know on this site comes from this rather serious-looking archaeological tome, which was originally written by someone who was once the Young Archaeologist of the Year. Time goes by so fast, doesn't it, Mike?
Yes, I've changed a bit in those times, yes, definitely.
You've dug in so many different places, but your heart's still here.
It is. I used to cycle 40 kilometres to come here when I was a schoolboy, so it really does hold something for me, this site.
What was it that attracted you about this place?
I think it was just that there was so much evidence. You could look in the fields and you'd see artefacts visible in the ploughed fields, and also this roadside ditch.
What's so significant about the ditch?
Well, the ditch was important because within it you could see pits and ditches and halves of the Roman period, suggesting that Roman settlement to the south of the river continued for about 600 metres, which is far more than was previously thought.
This site belongs to you more than anybody else in the world. We've only got 3 days here, but what would you like to be able to take away with you?
I'd like to take away a plan showing the settlement to the south of the enclosure. So to get a plan of that showing the property plots would be fantastic.
Mike entered his study of Alfoldine into the competition the same year as an entry from another young archaeologist, a 13-year-old hopeful called Miles Russell. Mike won, while Miles didn't even make the shortlist.
But we haven't got the verge on this side at all.
No.
But we might get the
Thankfully, time is a great healer.
I mean, field walking evidence, there are pottery concentrations in that field, but they do seem to increase going further south.
Going up slope?
Going up slope, yeah.
And that will mean more geophys. A lot more geophys.
Ah, now we're talking.
Is this the natural here then, this stuff?
That's it. So that's the outside of the site. So we now know where we are.
Over in Trench 2, Rakshar and Matt have located the Mancio's enclosure ditches, or at least one of the ditches. Well, to be more precise, they found one side of one ditch. Why have you extended this?
Well, because we couldn't find an edge. You see, we thought the edge of the ditch was going to be about here, Tony.
Hang on, let's have a look over here. So this is...
See how soft that is? That's really soft, isn't it?
Yeah, let me get my trowel into that, no problem.
Yeah.
So this is fill. We're on top of a ditch here, and we couldn't find the edge of the ditch where we thought it should be.
It's that?
Absolutely.
It is this?
Yeah. So this is the actual natural undisturbed bedrock.
Yeah.
So we can work our way back the trench that way.
The problem is, the geophys results suggest that each ditch is at least 4 metres wide and possibly up to 4 metres deep. We'll be lucky to get to the bottom of them by the end of day 3. The size of these ditches and the half-kilometre of settlement geophys are now investigating shows Alfoldine was a major focus of Roman activity in West Sussex. And to try and find out what was so appealing about this little part of southern England, Helen has volunteered for her first time team chopper ride.
Whoa! Look at that! It's really like magic, isn't it? It's amazing. Look at Stane Street, it's so long and so straight, isn't it?
It's a classic example of Roman military engineering, isn't it? Crashing its way straight across the countryside.
It's absolutely perfect. So why do you think our site is where it is?
Well, I think it is all about location, because you've got the really strong, straight Stane Street and crossing with the River Arun. So you've got this point in the landscape where you've got two major routes cross, and where you get that, then that's a prime location to establish a settlement.
So it's all about control?
I think it is. As you can see, you're at the centre of this huge landscape which is full of natural resources. You've got woodland, you've got clay to make tiles and pottery and bricks. Not more than about 2 miles from here, you've got a local source of iron ore. You've got everything you need in a way to sustain an industrial economy.
Back on the ground, we're finally rediscovering Winbolt's 1920s excavation in Trench 1.
You've got pink plaster on top of tiles, on top of green clay.
What that would mean then is that this is actually the base of one of these concrete floors. You know, Upper Signanen with the pink plaster, the pink and the red brick.
Oh, now look at that, Neil. Now that is superb painted wall plaster in it. Isn't that a gorgeous piece?
It's great, isn't it? You've got the light blue, and you can all see the brush marks and that dark blue stripe, can't you?
Is a room with a wall painted like this the sort of room you'd expect in a mansion?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you're going to expect fairly high quality accommodation in some parts at least, because, you know, you've got important people coming down this road. You know, it's not just your average B&B, so we can expect some pretty lavish rooms.
This plaster gives an idea of just how posh parts of this hotel might be. But then again, if you're on government business, you expect the best.
So what are they actually for? Are they just places for officials to stay the night?
Well, we have this thing in Roman Britain called the cursus publicus, which is really administrators journeying along these major routes, administering taxation, local economy, their justice, or whatever it happens to be. They may stay for one night or for a few days.
And then move on?
And then move on. And they're staged along the main routes. And along Staines Street, we have Hardham to the south, and we have Alfredine here. And these may be two of those staging posts along the route between Chichester and London.
So is that why ours is defended? Because it would have been full of unpopular tax collectors who the natives didn't like?
It may well be for the tax collectors, but you've got to bear in mind the fact that this whole sort of area, Sussex, Surrey and the whole of the southeast, is one of the first bits of Britain to be Romanised. So it's not a case of sort of angry natives in and around the area of Alfredine waiting to attack it. But I think we're sort of looking at it from a slightly wrong angle, because rather than thinking these are defended forts, these are points where resources are being protected. If you've got one or two members of the military here, they've got a nice defined area within which taxes, within which foodstuffs, within which perhaps new recruits are contained on their way towards London.
Well, whatever it was, the Romans certainly went to a lot of effort to protect it. About 11 o'clock this morning, Neil decided to put a tiny little discreet trench in here to see if he could find the ditch which would have once gone round the Mancio. But he couldn't see it, so he extended the trench, then he extended it again, then you extended it again and again. Was all this work really necessary?
Totally, Tony. Look, here is the ditch.
Hooray!
Look, it's very soft fill, very black, full of finds. Now, just behind Ratcha, we get a change. Ratcha, can you just point out where we see the change in the earth?
Yeah, this is the lighter colour. The ditch is actually cutting into this. It's going down that way.
So one edge of the ditch there, and another ditch just there.
Where does that go to?
Well, who knows? I mean, perhaps over about as far as here.
So we're going to extend back to here as well?
We'll see how time goes. But come this way, Tony, because this is really interesting. So think one ditch, think two ditches.
Yeah.
And then look, here we have, look at, very different. Yellowy clay. This must be the rampart bank inside the two outer ditches. So we should now be on the inside of the enclosure.
Hold on, if we've got all these ditches, and we can see from this plan that the ditches were huge, they went all the way out into this field. This would have been a massive undertaking to dig it.
I mean, it's not just one guy in his wheelbarrow, is it? You know, it's a really big endeavour, and what it shows is that they must have taken a lot of effort to enclose that building. It shows that building is important and it needed to be defended.
We really have set ourselves a challenge and a half. Goodness knows how long it'll take to get to the bottom of this ditch trench. And we haven't even started on the 600 plus metres of settlement. Never mind the Mancio, probably a full-time team by itself. Time to sort out our priorities. Phil, I guess the big news is after 13 years of Time Team, you've finally got a new hat.
I know, well the other one had got so rancid it needed it, but I decided to celebrate with some good archaeology, and we've got some cracking archaeology. Look, in this trench we've got this wonderful floor, which for the first time in this trench means we've got intact archaeology.
Do you reckon this looks classy enough to be the officers' quarters?
Well, it's what Wimble called the officers' quarters, but forget the officers' quarters. You know, he's living in a fantasy world. This is part of the Mancio. This must be part of what he referred to as the pink corridor. So we know more or less where we are, but tomorrow the real challenge is going to actually work out the exact plan of the Mancio, because that will be a real achievement.
John, you've been geophysing over there, haven't you?
Yeah, looking for the settlement outside, and look, we've got it. You can see these clear ditches, these very strong pits. But look at these responses here, right along the edge of the road. I'd just love to think that those might be mausolea.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that is potentially an extremely exciting feature there, that sort of circularity. I mean, that could be a hut circle, that could be a mausoleum, that could be a big pile of pants. We don't know until we dig into it, but it's an obvious target for first thing tomorrow.
I mean, a trench in there as well will tell us one important thing, won't it? Are these buildings earlier than this enclosure, or are they contemporary with it?
So we've got a fantastic site here that's jam-packed full of goodies. We've got a possible mausoleum, we've got a brand new hat. Do things get better than that? I don't think so. Beginning of day 2 here in West Sussex, and yesterday, where that digger is over there, we found what we think is a Mancio, which is a Roman service station or coaching house. And at some time or other, it was cut off from the rest of the site by some huge ditches over there by that digger. Why did they do that? Well, we don't know, but in order to understand what was going on there, we need to understand more about this area here. And yesterday, Mike, you said that your ambition was to see a plan of the whole of the Roman site. That's where John's got to so far.
Yeah, it's looking good. It's showing the enclosures continuing to the south of the Mancio.
So we're about where?
We're about here.
Yesterday evening, you got very excited by this little circle thing here. You said you thought it might be a mausoleum, somewhere where the Romans buried their dead.
It'd be nice, wouldn't it? It's in the right sort of place, right next to the road as it goes into the posting stations. We've got this big circular feature, and that's exactly where you'd expect a big monumental burial to be.
So what do we do with it, Bridge?
Well, I've got the super duper enlarged version here of your plan. We're going to stick a trench across it at a diagonal. We'll pick up that ditch there, and we'll pick up these anomalies in the middle that indicate that they might be burning, and they could be typical of cremations. Away you go, Ian!
The archaeologists suspect that this whole site may once have been a single big Roman settlement before the ditches were dug to cut off the Mancio. But getting that crucial dating evidence from the ditch trench is turning into a bit of a nightmare. We just don't know if we can afford the manpower to dig down to the bottom of these massive defences. And over at the Mancio Trench, we now face a number of challenges. For example, unpicking the remains of a 1920s dig by local archaeologist Samuel Winbolt. But perhaps more crucially, working out what our Mancio may look like. Whenever I've asked any of you three about Mancios, you've always said, oh, it's like a travel lodge or a hotel or a service station. But that doesn't really help me picture what was going on there in Roman times, does it?
Well, think of a Roman motel. You know, what are you going to have? You want rooms, don't you? I mean, Victor's drawn a kind of a plan here, a drawing, based on another mansion that's been excavated. So imagine you bring your horse in, you dismount, you want to get rid of your horse to the stables, come in here, change your clothes, go through to the bathhouse, have a nice wash, come back, have something to eat, and then go to sleep. So, you know, this kind of typical courtyard building is quite usual.
Mark, you probably know more about Mancios than anybody else I know. Can you work out what bit of the Mancio we've got in Phil's Trench?
It's very difficult to gauge, to be honest, at this stage. There are certainly hints of substantial structures, and I suspect we may be close to one end of the wing, perhaps, where you've got the bathhouse.
But because there's a but here, isn't there? You know, this is not our building. This is based on another site. There isn't a single blueprint to a Mancio. They're not always this size. Some can be much bigger, some can be quite small, and some don't even have the courtyard. Yeah. Some can just always be like a corridor. So unfortunately, we can't just say, OK, we're digging here, we've got that wall, and we can immediately reconstruct the rest of the building. Now, the problem we have is that in Phil's Trench, Winbolt has dug very deeply in there. I think he's virtually destroyed most of the archaeology in that trench.
So we're closing down this trench and opening one in an area not investigated by Winbolt.
So actually, the thought is, have we got a range of rooms coming round with a courtyard in the middle? You see that? Yeah. So
John believes that with the eye of faith, he can see a pretty substantial building, possibly even with a courtyard.
John?
And within minutes, the archaeology seems to back up his theory.
Is this the sort of thing that you might have picked up on this brick?
Yeah, I think there should be a cut feature through here.
Yeah, well then that's reflected by this brick and tile, is it?
Yeah.
It sounds like we are on the spot then.
And things are also looking up in the understaffed ditch trench.
We still haven't got to the bottom of them, and hopefully you'll be able to help us with those.
We've now got a virtually limitless supply of extra diggers from a local college, Christ's Hospital. This also just happens to be the school where our 1920s archaeologist Samuel Winbolt taught, and his legacy looms large here. A lot of these sixth formers are actually studying archaeology.
You start from this end, you see this yellow here, you don't want to hit the yellow, so just keep taking this back a bit, like that. Where we go?
So in return for some practical experience in trench digging, we're now confident we can get to the bottom of these ditches by the end of day 3. Hopefully. These massive ditches didn't enclose just the Mancio, but a whole complex of buildings that would have served Roman officials and traders as they travelled the country. Horses were the main form of transport, so one of the key facilities here would have been the blacksmiths. And among his many jobs would have been the manufacture of what's believed to be the precursor of the modern horseshoe, the hippo sandal.
Although I've seen pictures of these many times in books, I've actually never seen a real one, so I'm really interested in how it's going to look.
Luckily, I managed to get up to the British Museum last week, and we actually managed to get up close and personal with some, so I could come and make some today.
So how are you going to start making them?
Well, I'm going to take a plate, I've got to forge it down into this nice triangular shape, and then turn a loop on the front. And then the wings on the side, we're going to have to form those, and then weld them on top and bottom. And try and come down on top of it rather than coming back towards it.
This design is based on various archaeological finds, but surprisingly, no one's ever tried the theory out on a real live horse.
Get in there, come on, that's it, that's the one.
So we're using Christ Hospital's fully equipped school forge, yes, school forge, to test how practical this hippo sandal is. Oh, and we will be using a real live horse. Back at the trench in the settlement, Miles has now found the source of his geophysical anomaly. The problem is, it's not quite as straightforwardly Roman as we'd hoped for.
Is it a Muslim? No, I don't think so, but I think if you bear in mind this morning I said it could be a roundhouse or a mausoleum. I'm tending to veer slightly more towards the roundhouse interpretation.
Because?
Well, because we've got here this big sort of area of burning. You can see all these stones with charcoal and baked clay around it. And that seems to be at the centre of John's geophysical circularity. So I tend to think of it more of being a roundhouse with a central half.
I mean, that's Iron Age, isn't it? That's before the Romans even get here.
Well, yes, but I mean, the population aren't going to suddenly become Roman and start building square, rectangular buildings. Roundhouses, Iron Age structures are probably going to continue for some time.
So basically, you're telling me that you found a bunch of burnt stones?
Yes, but it's a very interesting bunch of burnt stones.
While Miles ponders the future of his trench, we've now analysed the finds from Phil's first trench over the Mancio, and we think we now know what was going on there.
We've got structural components. These are pieces of box flue tile that certainly indicate a heated room. But I think we can also, from that, say that there is certainly at least one bath.
Wow, that's
because
brilliant.
We've got the pieces here of opus signinum.
That's that kind of concrete floor.
Yeah, of
stuff.
waterproof stuff,
Yeah.
and it's often found lining baths, plunge baths.
And is this one decorated?
No, it's actually limescale.
Wow, actually from the bath water?
Yes.
Oh, they should have cleaned their bath more often.
It may be one rather poorly maintained plunge pool, but it places the Mancio's bathhouse here to the northwest of the complex. Phil, is this trench easier to understand than what was going on there?
Oh, this is an absolute dream, I mean.
And thanks to Phil's new trench, John's theory that this is a pretty sizable Mancio, possibly with 3 ranges, is now looking very promising.
In here, we think we're probably into a courtyard, so that this whole area is the actual courtyard of the site. And then looks like there's probably going to be a wall line somewhere through here. And then you pass through here into a corridor, which you can see looks like we've got tesserae on it, so that it may actually have had a mosaic floor. Then you go through from the corridor into a series of rooms, and we've got a wall line here.
Oh, you can see that quite clearly, yeah.
And you can see the return of it going across there. But as you go through the room, you find that here, in fact, we've got another wall line.
Oh, yeah.
Coming through there. So it actually gives us 1, 2, 3 sides of the wall, and here we've actually got the 4th side.
I think what's great about this trench now is in the last one we just talked about the depths of archaeology. Now we're talking about plan of archaeology. We understand the plan.
That's right.
Plenty more work this afternoon then?
You bet.
Or not. Just as we prepare for a manic afternoon of trenching, the heavens open and the clear wall lines of the Mancio and the obvious circularity of the circular feature disappear under a sea of muddy clay. Phil, we've dug in much worse weather than this, and even when everyone else has packed up, we've had to prise you out of the trench. So how come you've stopped?
It's so simple, it's a geology.
What do you mean?
Well, this ground here has just got so much clay in it that as soon as it starts to rain, it just puddles up. There's just no way it's going to drain away.
It's the archaeology that comes first here. And if we actually start to work this site, we're actually going to destroy the archaeology.
So what do we do?
We simply have to wait. I mean, and it's not just a matter of waiting until the rain stops. We've got to wait until the water in the site drains away.
So we're now all playing a waiting game. Well, almost all of us, because when the going gets tough, the tough get geophysical.
That's a really strangely beautiful object, isn't it? Can I have a
feel
look?
free, yeah.
Thanks.
It's a bit heavy.
Oh gosh, it is heavy.
Thankfully, our archaeological experiment hasn't been affected by the downpour, and we can finally see if our alleged Roman horseshoe is up to the job.
We could be the first people for some centuries to actually be looking at a horse's hoof in a hippo sand.
Yeah, I think we probably are, but it's just trying to decide whether this is the right way to tie it on or not.
Ooh.
Well,
he thinks it's strange, doesn't he?
He thinks it's strange.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether you'd want to work a horse for any long distance with these on. You certainly wouldn't be able to pull a load with that if you were trying to pull a wagon. I think that'll do there, John, actually. I think that's enough. I think turning is going to be difficult with those spikes out the front.
Yeah.
He's going to try and stab himself with those on a regular basis. I certainly wouldn't want to ask him to trot with them on.
No. And then if they're not for heavy loads and they're not for long distances on metalled roads, what are they for?
Well, the only other thing that I can think of is that they would have been used for a veterinary type purpose if they've damaged the bottom of the foot. To hold something in, like a brown poultice to draw out infections, would have been ideal for holding something like that in.
Well, it might not have been the result we expected, but it does show that sometimes it pays to put theory into practice. Back on site, we've hatched a plan to buy us a few extra hours digging on this rain-sodden site. We're going to cover Phil's trench with this tent and use a digger to expose clean, dry archaeology in Miles's trench. Unfortunately, the conditions in the ditch trench make it too dangerous to dig, so at most we've only one more day to get to the bottom of it. But although we still don't have a date for these defences, Stuart thinks he now knows why they were constructed.
This is about control. If you want to go up and down this road, you have to go in one gate, out the other gate and over a bridge. It's about Roman imperial taxation. It was a way of easily generating revenue to support the army. In fact, I'm just quoting from some original sources here where regulations for taxes per capita. For each slave, 1 denarius and a half, for a horse, mare, jackass, mule, donkey, ox, half a denarius, and so on. If it moved, they taxed it. I mean, you've got to think here of why would they want to do that here. And one thing we've discovered is that there's lots of iron in this area. And iron is, in effect, in the Roman period, it's a controlled substance. It's controlled by the military, its movement, so it doesn't fall into hostile hands. And therefore, once it's controlled by the military, then you get the military stamp, which is the building of ramparts and ditches and all that sort of thing. And in effect, those defensive earthworks are it's like a big bonded warehouse, if you can put it like that.
What did you say you were a young archaeologist of the year 1981?
1981.
It's almost the end of day 2. And while we've managed to get some work done in a couple of the trenches, to be honest, the rain has completely scuppered our plans.
Bridget, what have you done with the circularity?
It seems to have disappeared altogether.
Yeah.
When the machine is clearing back, we'll be able to see the features very clearly. But of course now we've got rain again, water starts pooling, and it just is phasing it out again. And you can see these guys out here working in it. We've got to get them out because it's just too wet and claggy.
Churning everything up, aren't they? Yeah, I think we ought to call it a day.
But it's not completely doom and gloom. Geophys have gallantly continued to survey this large waterlogged site, and John thinks a clear picture of Alfaldine's development is beginning to emerge. But it's getting late, so time to swap the cold, wet misery of the site for the cold, wet comfort of a pint. It was a frustrating afternoon.
Very frustrating. This morning was going so well. And I thought, yeah, we can now see the walls. It can match it to John's geophysics. We're actually getting a plan of the Mancio. We got the site on the run, but yeah, we've been held up for sure.
How was it for you, John?
Well, we've had a fantastic day. I mean, look, Claire and Fee have done wonders. They've surveyed about 3 hectares today, and we've got the settlement we wanted. Look, we've extended the survey some 300, 400 metres beyond the main complex. There's a whole series of ditches and these large pits and then trackways coming round. I mean, it looks a bit irregular, though. I think it's probably Iron Age rather than actually Roman. You know, it's then developed.
I mean, what it looks to me, Tony, is like we've got a native indigenous village, and look what happens. The Roman government puts a road right through the middle of it, and later that says, yeah, what a great spot for a hotel. And even later then says, let's put a bank and ditch right round the outside.
Yeah, all right, but that's a theory, isn't it? How do we ascertain whether or not this settlement is actually earlier than the Mansio?
Well, you know what I'm going to say, don't you?
You're going to put a trench in, aren't you?
What do you think, John?
Well, I think if we take one of these strong anomalies that I think is probably a pit, and then we'll hopefully get some dating evidence.
Yeah, and we can compare pottery from that with material from the ditch, from the bank, and from the Mansio to build up a picture of how this site developed over time.
Are we actually going to be able to get inside the Mansio?
Oh, for sure. By tomorrow night, we'll know what a Roman bedroom in a hotel looks like.
A Roman hotel bedroom by tomorrow. Unless, of course, it continues raining, in which case we'll just have to spend the whole day in here.
If there's a good archaeological reason.
Beginning of day 3 here in West Sussex on the A29, what the Romans used to call Stane Street. And yesterday we thought we'd found the Roman Mansio or roadhouse. And then at lunchtime the skies opened and the archaeology was washed out. Well, as you can see, it's another day. The rain stopped, but the mud's still here. So the question is, can we still dig? And the answer is a resounding yes. The first target is the new trench pinpointed by John. This is a good 400 metres from the Mansio, but if we can get good dating evidence from this part of the settlement, it should help us with the overall story of the site.
Is that a coin?
That's the coin, yep.
Well, you can tell from the size alone it's going to be 1st or 2nd century. It's
got it out of the bag yet.
Come on, ye of little faith.
Yep.
Let's have a look.
That's almost nothing there.
Well, actually, you can actually see there's a head. And it's quite prominent actually in relief, and I would put money on that being either Vespasian or his son Titus between sort of 70, 80 AD. Well, not a word out of you.
I'll believe you.
Thank you.
The coin's date of around 70 AD suggests this part of the settlement was here around the time Stane Street was built. Geophys have played a bit of a blinder on a difficult and soaked site. As well as revealing the plan of the settlement, their results inside the enclosure are combining with the archaeology to uncover a rather impressive building.
Phil, your tent's kept you pretty dry, but how's it going in there?
Well, I'm going down into the foundations, but look at the depths of it. I mean, surely a foundation that deep, you could be looking at a 2-storey building, I'd have thought.
This building is getting bigger by the minute. We've now established the Mansio had a bathhouse here and consisted of at least 3 ranges, each of which could be 2 stories high. We're pretty confident we've got a long range of buildings going in this direction, and out here I step into a courtyard. But is it an interior courtyard with other buildings beyond it, or is this the whole extent of the complex? How do we work that out?
Well, let's have a look at the geophysics. I mean, here's the ranger room where Phil's investigating. That's very clear. Round here looks like more rooms and perhaps another range there. But I'd like to prove it. I mean, this could be something else. It's very noisy on the geophysics. So maybe a small trench, I don't know, 2 by 2. And I would think maybe there, because that looks like the clearest area. Just literally pick up the wall line and we've cracked it.
The more we dig, the clearer this mass of geophysical information becomes. A part that is from Miles's trench and his intriguing circularity. Over the past 3 days, it's been a mausoleum, a Romano-British roundhouse, and then he lost it completely.
Miles, is it still here?
It's come back again. My circularity has returned. We've got what looks like the circular gully swinging right the way around the trench. So I still like the idea of that being a half, that sort of burning area in the middle, and this being a circular all around it.
But it's all Roman?
Yeah, it's all Romano-British.
So it looks like Miles's early suspicions were right. This is a Romano-British roundhouse built by the locals and part of the original settlement that was here when the Mancio was built. But this trench refuses to be straightforward.
There's a complicating factor in that just outside that circular feature, Ian's found a series of other pits. What have you got down there, Ian?
I've got a broken, but it appears to be fairly complete pot just there.
What's just the outline?
God, I can see that, yeah. So that's the whole diameter of it, isn't it, there?
It looks like most of the pot. I mean, that's the fabric.
And you've got that sort of New Forest indented beaker.
I mean, that's useful, isn't it? Because that probably is going to be sort of 3rd century AD. So again, it shows the activity here outside the enclosure is contemporary with what's going on inside the enclosure. It's not earlier, it's contemporary.
We're also at last getting near to a story for the ditches that were at some point dug to separate and, we presume, protect the Mancio from the rest of the settlement.
Yep, here it is. You can see this huge, thick, yellow clay of the rampart.
Yeah.
You can see this brown stuff here.
Yeah.
That's an earlier ground surface, and the rampart has been slapped straight on top of it.
Yeah, and this is the stuff that's coming from under the rampart.
This is the stuff that's been sealed by the bank.
It's just what we've been wanting, isn't it?
This is a classic piece of archaeological dating. Because when these ditches were dug into the clay, the spoil was used to build a large rampart, sealing any finds on the ground surface underneath.
What we've got here is a shallow platter and this cordon vessel, and I think we're looking at a sort of late 1st century AD group of pottery here.
Right, so pretty early.
Yeah.
Early then.
Yeah.
So we now know the defences were constructed around 90 AD, when the settlement was already here. We can also get a date for how long they lasted, because it appears once these ditches outlived their usefulness, they were filled in with a mixture of earth and rubbish which we can date.
There's a ton of pottery, which
Yeah,
is
it's very interesting actually, because it's all fairly consistent. It looks as if it's going to fall into the end of the 2nd century and into the early 3rd. Certainly nothing later than the middle of the 3rd century, so it's quite a tight group for dating, I think.
It looks like these defences dominated this landscape for the best part of 150 years. But the enclosure's only part of the story, and Geophys have now completed their exhaustive survey of Roman Alfoldine, much to the delight of one long-time fan of the site, Mike Luke.
Mike, you've been looking at this place for 25 years.
Yes.
What does it feel like to see a plan of it for the very first time?
It's brilliant to see a plan of the settlement adjacent to the road. That's fantastic.
And look, on the far side of the road, we've got a whole series of large pits, but we've also extended down below towards the river in that direction.
Excellent.
The ditches are continuing, the pits are continuing, track right here.
What's unusual and what we hadn't expected is that the settlement actually seems to be far bigger than we thought. It seems to be continuing down to the river, and also we don't know how far it goes to the south.
It's amazing that you can get all this without even digging a single hole,
Without digging,
really.
no. Geophysics has really come up trumps. It's fabulous.
We think the story goes like this. There was a settlement here by the time the Romans built the defences around the Mancio in about 90 AD. This newly fortified complex then acted as a customs point, taxing travellers along Stane Street, as well as providing secure storage for iron shipments from local quarries. And so Alfoldine continued to prosper throughout the 2nd and early 3rd centuries. But then the whole site ceased activity. And Neil now believes he knows the reason for Alfoldine's demise.
You know this is about tax collection, don't you, this site?
Yeah.
And about iron. Well, in the middle of the 3rd century AD, the Weald ceased to be an important centre of iron production, and production shifted to the west of England to the Forest of Dean. So hey, guess what happens? Just as the iron industry goes down the tubes, this site falls out of use, and the governmental tax collectors head off to Gloucestershire.
It would seem the whole of Alfoldine was reliant on the Mancio complex, because when the taxmen left, so did the rest of the settlement. But there's a last surprising twist to this story in Miles's trench, where Ian's uncovered this almost intact 3rd century beaker.
Was this down there with it, this bit of glass?
Yeah, it was down off the bottom of the ditch here.
because that's from one of these big square bottles, probably made in the Rhineland, round Cologne in the 2nd century. It's just that they're often used as cinerary urns to take cremation burials. And with a complete pot crushed in on itself, I wonder if there might have been a disturbed burial here.
Well, it's possible, isn't it?
Yeah.
We now believe that the Romano-British roundhouse that once stood here was abandoned when the Mansio's defensive ditches cut through its plot. But the leftover land still had its uses and became the ideal location for Roman burials, being beside a major road and just outside a fortified Roman complex. Back inside the enclosure, our final trench has deciphered another piece of the complex Mansio geophys.
Kerry went for a bit of keyhole surgery here, looking for a very, very easy story and looking for the wall to the Mansio. Have you found it?
Yep, I've got an easy answer. That's your natural, or the floor, and that's your wall.
Have we got a back to the wall?
It is, you can just see the yellow just creeping through on the other side.
Well, that's great, isn't it? Because it now proves the width of the courtyard and proves we've got another range to our Mansio over here, so that's great.
Yep.
This fourth range means we do have a courtyard building, while Phil's trench has now revealed a corridor that surrounded that courtyard.
So it does look as though we got the corridor as we first thought. What we didn't know was that it was going to turn through 90 degrees and go that way.
So this is actually the internal southeast corner of the building.
Exactly.
And the whole of the south range now we can sort of plot from behind us.
Precisely. You're in the corridor, I'm in the courtyard.
We're now getting an idea of just how impressive John's results are. Because with the help of the archaeology, we can filter out much of the noise on his original geophys to give us this. The actual floor plan of the Alfaldine Mansio. An impressive two-storey coaching inn, complete with its bathhouse. And at the heart of a complex with paddocks, stables, and all the other services a traveller would have expected. And we're now standing in one of the bedrooms. Right, I'm a weary traveller at the end of the day. I've pulled up into the Mansio. What do I get for my money?
You're a very important person, Tony. You would get a room to yourself, I'm sure. Good sized room, in your cum, imagine your bed, perhaps a brazier. If it's cold in winter, warm your hands, chest. You could then go out, perhaps have your dinner in the dining room, have a bath, and maybe a few alternative attractions, perhaps a few girls or something like that.
Fantastic. Did everybody get a room on their own?
Almost certainly not. I think it would have depended on your status. I mean, some of these rooms you could easily fit a number of bunk beds in, so you could be literally sleeping with 10 goat herds or something like that.
No, I'm high status.
Sorry, you'll have a single goat.
But hey, last night you kept in your wagon or in a tent, so to get to civilization and have a wash must have been good.
And of course, a decent meal. So as a reward for our diggers' hard work, food historian Sally Granger and the pupils from Christ's Hospital have prepared a veritable Roman feast. And among the delights on offer are asparagus quiche, fish balls and freshly cooked hare. Strangely, dormice aren't included.
What is this?
Is this hair? You don't like hair?
Well, I don't know. It all depends how long it's been hanging around.
Not that long, not that long, promise you.
Ooh.
Ah, in a Roman sauce.
Ooh.
You ready for more?
That is, isn't it?
Ooh. Sure, that's different. That is different.
What's that? I told you it was disgusting.
What's that?
This place lasted 150 years. Imagine how many people must have walked through the doors looking for a good night's sleep and a warm bath and a decent meal. There'd have been Roman soldiers and administrators and tax collectors and British traders all wandering through the rooms, admiring the mosaics, eating their food off the fine Samian ware and charging up their batteries for another day's journey down Stane Street. And quite frankly, after 3 pretty gruelling days in some fairly horrendous weather conditions, all of us will be only too glad to get back to the 21st century version of the Mansio just as soon as we finished our feast. If you were a Roman soldier guarding the northern frontier of the empire, which would be worse, facing the warring Picts on Hadrian's Wall, or stuck in a tower like this in the marshes of the Netherlands, watching over the River Rhine, the main supply route into Britain? Here in Utrecht, archaeologists are making some amazing discoveries which detail what life really would have been like here on the frontier and how hard the Roman army had to work in order to keep the supply route to Britain open. Time Team have been invited to the Netherlands to help uncover that story. And you'll understand why we're just a tad excited when I tell you that one of the things that we're going to be digging over the next 3 days is a perfectly preserved Roman boat. Utrecht in the Netherlands was once on the northern frontier of the Roman Empire, which at one time extended from Hadrian's Wall in Scotland all the way across to the Black Sea. In the Netherlands, the frontier followed the course of the River Rhine, which was the main supply route used to get goods and soldiers out to Britain, the island on the very edge of the known world. Amazingly, much of that story is preserved here, in the waterlogged soils on the outskirts of Utrecht, even though the River Rhine itself now flows further to the south. In advance of one of the biggest building projects in Europe, archaeologists have been given the chance to investigate before some 30,000 new houses completely cover this area. This picture is based on their fantastic discoveries so far, which include Roman watchtowers, forts, and the frontier road, all built alongside the River Rhine.
I mean, you've had some fantastically preserved stuff here, haven't you?
Yeah, why do you need us? You've done a great job.
Well, after a couple of years of Roman archaeology, we're still left with a few problems we hope to solve.
Have you got time with the building work?
Well,
if it's almost on top of you.
To be honest, it's the last round of Roman archaeology.
Right.
The building is getting close.
Yeah.
OK, so we haven't got very long. What are the things that you want us to resolve for you, John?
Well, we've got this Zandveld site. We've got a collection of amateur finds and some trial trenches in the neighbourhood, suggesting a military site, but we're not sure, really.
You said two problems.
Yeah, there's not a problem over here. That's a river bench. We excavated one ship, a Roman ship, a couple of years ago. But now, after that one was excavated, we discovered another one, and it's still there. So we want to know the date of this ship.
So you didn't excavate?
We didn't excavate. It's still there. It's over there, just a couple of meters down there.
None of us can quite believe it. Buried just 2 meters under here is an intact Roman boat. So where's the pointy bit, the prow?
Well, we've found one end of the ship somewhere over here. And, well, we expect it to be running 30 meters in that direction.
30 meters? What, I mean, in other words, it goes right through those trees then?
Well, deep down under, really. I mean, it's going down very steep in that direction.
Eric, I mean, look at this. This is so dry. What makes you think it's still going to be well preserved in the ground?
Well, I hope it still is. I mean, it was there 2 years ago when, with the same conditions. I mean, it's waterlogged, really. You have the groundwater table is, well, this deep, I guess,
right.
at the moment.
We've got to find it first, haven't we?
I think
so. Let's get. No, it's here, mate. And look, we've got a digger. Let's use it.
Let's get started.
Eric and Hera discovered the boat 2 years ago, but only had time to expose a fraction of it. Essentially, our goal is to find out how old it is, and personally, I can't wait to get my first glimpse of a genuine Roman boat. But we're also going to try to help sort out what was going on at the Zandveld site that was further along the river. Eric and Hera discovered a Roman watchtower in this area, but because of pottery finds in this field, they think there may be a small Roman fort here too. They're hoping Geophysical might be able to locate it for them. Roman forts on this frontier were built within half a day's march of each other, and several have been excavated. The dig here at Alphenfort turned up many well-preserved Roman coins like this one, which tell a story in themselves. It had been assumed that the forts were built by Emperor Claudius on his way to successfully conquer Britain in 43 AD. But surprisingly, the coins have revealed that it was the Emperor Caligula who fortified the supply route to Britain a few years earlier.
There was a massive amount of Caligulan coins, nearly 400 of them, which is very impressive. And in my opinion, the whole fort dates to 40-41 AD.
So what might Caligula have been doing here?
He was the third Roman emperor. He only reigned for 4 years, from 37 to 41. He was extremely keen to emulate the great military achievements of his father, Germanicus, who was a general who fought up here very successfully along the Rhine. The only trouble was that Caligula was slightly demented and a bit of a murderous megalomaniac. So, although he planned to invade Britain and he got all the preparations up and running here, he ended up deciding that he was going to conquer the sea, and he did that by telling his soldiers to go and take seashells away from the sea.
So he just turned around and went back to Rome?
That's basically what he did.
With the seashells?
Yes. Probably. And, of course, the Roman populace was not terribly impressed by this great military victory, and he was assassinated, but he did leave behind him all the preparations for an invasion of Britain.
But this Caligulan coin has more to tell, because it's been counterstamped with the Emperor Claudius's name.
It reads Tiberius Claudius Imperator. He puts his name on Caligula's coins because after his death, as Guy told us, his name was cursed. His coins were no longer valid. And by putting his name on them, Claudius made them valid again, so to say.
So does this imply that these forts weren't just used for Caligula's failed invasion, but for Claudius's successful one as well?
Exactly. Caligula had made all the preparations for an invasion. If you'd come here in around the year 43, you would have seen thousands of troops and all the equipment, the barges and the boats ready for an invasion of Britain, just like the lead up to D-Day in 1944. And of course, those soldiers had to be paid. 3 out of the 4 legions used for invading Britain came from the garrisons along the Rhine. So that's 15,000 men alone.
We actually know that?
We know that for a fact.
But proving the case for a fort at the Zandveld site is not going to be easy.
Our problem, you see, Tony, is that on that side of the ditch over there, there's going to be a lot of dumping of material in the next few weeks.
Yeah, we've got a few weeks left, actually.
So we want to look there to see what these Roman finds were that were found earlier.
Yeah.
On this side, both of these fields are scheduled, but we're only allowed 1 trench. So we've geophysicked in this field, and we're going to geophysick in that field, but we don't want to take a decision on where to dig until we've got both lots done.
So do we just have to sit twiddling our thumbs until geophysics has been done?
No, we can start on that trench the other side.
Excellent. So, as the first trench gets underway at the Zandveld site, I'm going to check how Phil's getting on locating our Roman boat. Phil?
Go!
Is this stuff what Eric's guys laid down last time?
Yeah, this is the polythene that's directly on top of the boat.
This plastic sheet was put down to keep the moisture in the soil and help preserve the boat until this excavation could happen.
There she is. Look at that. Oh, look at that.
Can I come in, Phil?
Yeah, come and have a look at this. I mean, look at that. You can't. Look at that. I mean, listen to that. That's as solid as rock, isn't it? Eh? Super. Yeah.
Wow.
Come on, you're enjoying this,
I
aren't you?
certainly am. I mean, that could have been in the ground for 5 years, couldn't it?
But you know, it's been there for 2,000 years.
Extraordinary.
Incredible, isn't it, eh?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the beauty of it. It's not just a piece of wood. You know it is actually a boat. I mean, somebody's actually seen it. They know it's a boat. But there's just so much we don't know about it.
At this rate, we'll have it in the water again by Friday. The boat that Eric and Hera have already excavated was found just a short distance away and is of the same type as the one we're digging. It means that we know our boat should look something like this. This is a Zamadam-type river barge, named after the place where they were first discovered. These flat-bottom barges were used by the army and independent traders to move cargoes along the River Rhine. Most, like this one, have been dated to the 2nd century AD. But according to Eric, our boat could be significantly earlier, which would get the archaeologists really excited. The preservation of the wood here in the Netherlands is so exceptional that Mick has sneaked off to see some of the special finds discovered in the waterlogged soils.
What's this in here then?
It looks a bit
This
like
post was once part of a Roman watchtower, a structure that would have looked like this when it was built around 62 AD. Not only is this post the best preserved in the world, but it also has something written on it.
For example, here you have the I.
Right.
Here is the T.
Yeah.
And here is the A.
That's
the funny
just
thing is that they made it and they just erected the post and filled it, so it was not visible.
Yeah. And what about this lot here?
We're talking about watchtowers. You know, we have these ideas of soldiers standing on guard on these watchtowers.
Yeah.
But you know, in front of their watchtower, there was a river.
I was going to say, these look like fish traps to me.
Exactly. You know.
These, in fact, are eel traps found in front of one of the watchtowers, and something like 1,950 years old.
The eel entering this little thing here, the tunnel, swimming through here, entering the basket, you know, swimming around, eating the bait. Here were some little twigs here, but they couldn't get out. And to hold it on, you know, on place in a riverbed, they put a lot of things inside.
I was going to say, it looks like Roman tile in that one. And
this one is even better.
Brick and tile here.
Roof tiles. That one, you know.
Just to weight it down.
Yes, to weight it down. This one has such a fine little twigs. Look at these. I like this one the most because it's so beautiful made.
And the preservation of the boat looks to be just as good. Phil, that piece of wood must be at least a metre below the bit that you found.
I know. But the main thing is we've now got the bottom of it, and you can see, look, there's the join between two of the planks, and it comes through underneath this main rib.
There's a heck of a lot of it there,
I
isn't
know.
there? Could we have the whole of the boat here, Jaap?
No, one of the ends of the ship is missing. We don't know if it's the fore or the aft, but it's above the groundwater table and completely gone, and it only left a soil mark. But
So all this is stuff that you've exposed before?
Yes.
OK, so when do we get to stuff that's new archaeology?
In an hour.
Wow. Which bit?
And, the bit just under the feet of Phil.
So you literally dug down one side of the ship. It was a boat.
Only a part of the
But
side.
you never saw the whole thing right the way across.
No.
Phil, what's that lump just below this new piece of wood?
Well, we've got one here, and one there, and another one there.
These are big chunks of volcanic rock, and Jaap reckons they've fallen into the boat from the riverbank. Surprisingly, there's no natural stone in the Netherlands, and it appears that the Romans shipped in basalt rocks from Germany to try and stop the river eroding the road along the frontier. Over at the Zandveld site, the news isn't good. The Geophys survey hasn't revealed anything that looks obviously like a Roman fort. Worse still, having decided to investigate this intriguing blob on the plot, our one and only trench allowed in this area has revealed what looks like modern rubbish.
It's copper. It's a can, really, but particular strange form. What's it?
No, that's not ferrous, so
That
I'm not
wouldn't
seeing
explain.
that. No,
that wouldn't explain your signal.
but the bit of wire could.
Of course, there could be more here than just bits of wire. There could be Roman finds deeper down in this trench, and we'll find out tomorrow. But there is some positive news from this site, because Rakshas's trench, put in here outside the scheduled area, has found some Roman pottery to compare with these pieces that were found here some time ago.
That's a piece of 1st century stuff, isn't it? Flavian. You know, these two pieces tell me straight away we've got two totally different dates, haven't we? That's well on into the 2nd century. That's perhaps up to 100 years later. And that flagon. This all screams Roman army to me, doesn't it? This quality of assemblage.
Yeah, I mean, we have a few hundred pieces of pottery, and normally, if you have a native site, you would have expected 30–40% of handmade ware.
Right.
And there's nothing.
No.
I mean, not a single piece.
What about the stuff you found, Raksha?
Well, I found quite a lot over quite a long date range. There's this.
Oh, yeah.
So same.
Another 1st century piece, very distinctive. What about that?
That.
More of the white flagons.
Yeah.
Yep.
But we do have something here that Eric and I are very excited about.
Well, it's an ordinary plain Samian cup, but it's got writing on it.
Not just that, though.
I think I have a little present for you.
Is it the same one?
Try this one.
It's the same one, isn't it? Yes, it is. Goes together,
There you
doesn't it? Yeah. We've got a whole word there, scratched on there. We've got C-C-E. That's a cursive form of E with 2 vertical strokes. P-T-U-S, acceptus. And if there was an A, it's been rubbed off.
Yeah.
And that must mean the accepted one. So I wonder if that's the name of somebody who lived here.
Must be.
Unless it's just saying it's not a reject. And then there's another AVG, org, underneath. Isn't that wonderful?
Yes, beautiful. I mean, this points to military present, I would say.
Yeah, reading and writing. There's always far more of that on a Roman military site. Out here, in these remote provinces, like Britain and on the Rhineland. It's extraordinary, isn't it?
So, we're not giving up at the Zanfeld site just yet. But right now, as we reach the end of the day, I have to admit that my attention's focused completely on our Roman boat.
In fact, what you here see is the top of this plank, the upper plank.
That's that one there?
Yeah, that one there.
So what we've got is the full height of the boat in the trench?
Yes.
Normally, when we excavate anything Roman, it comes out of the ground looking pretty ancient and bedraggled. But this is completely different. Look at the angle of this boat. It's like it was moored here yesterday. And the quality of that timber, it could have been cut last spring.
It's fantastically well preserved, isn't it?
It doesn't look ancient at all, does it? It's modern.
No.
And that's just at the end of day one. I can't imagine what this is going to look like tomorrow. Beginning of day 2 here in Utrecht in the Netherlands, which used to be part of the northern frontier of the Roman Empire. And we're looking at 2 sites, a mystery military one over there, and this huge trench here in which there's a Roman boat which is coming out looking, in my eyes, really modern and pristine. Except last night I had a moment of panic. Suppose it is modern and pristine and not Roman at all. Yeah. There are no Roman finds associated with that boat. I haven't seen any Roman graffiti on the sides of it. And dating this stuff must be really difficult. Is it Roman? How do we know?
Dating it now, without general chronology, the constructional features of the ship points toward a typical Roman boat. For instance, the transition from bottom to sides with one L-shaped piece of wood, like half a dugout, for instance. That's typical Rome.
Are there any other kinds of boat apart from Roman ones that have that same kind of build?
No.
Well, that's a relief, isn't it? But I had to ask.
I can't believe how beautiful that is. It's nice. That is absolutely... Just...
And they took all the bark off the lineage, so everything is worked.
Everything, it is, isn't it?
We're digging a Roman river barge, and it's got to be the best preserved structure we've ever seen. It's only a pity that 3/4 of it is buried too deep for us to get at on this dig. This boat's on a steep angle, and one end's some 6 metres below ground, too deep even for Geophys to detect with radar. This dig is all about exposing a 5-metre section of the barge that will allow the experts to find out exactly how old it is. Phil, meanwhile, has gone to have a closer look at the other Roman barge found close to ours that's already been fully excavated. It's being stored at the Netherlands Institute for Ships and Underwater Archaeology.
And it's just been raining.
Joining Phil on this trip is British woodworking expert Damien Goodburn.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable.
This is the bow end.
Up there. Is that the front? That's the front.
That's the mast. And in that big block, that's where the mast goes,
yeah, that's
is
the
it?
mast, yeah. We didn't find it, but there was a mast in there.
I mean,
probably carrying a sail, but also used
for towing,
with ropes.
for pulling the boat.
Yeah.
I mean, the quality of the planking, and I mean, the techniques, the woodworking skills, incredible, isn't it?
I mean, you can still see some of the original saw marks where the saw used to cut the planks went up and down and left scratches on the surface here. The axe marks preserved on the side of the frame timbers here. The tool was being used in this direction to trim up the edges of this strengthening timber here.
To me, it's the scale of it. I mean, it's big enough seeing half of it, but when you think about what it's like full size is enormous, isn't it?
It's enormous.
What Phil's looking at is half the length of the boat, which has been cut into two for ease of storage. These barges are a bit like a punt, and this one measures 2.5 metres wide by 25 metres long.
Do you know what they would have carried in this? Because presumably you could have got a hell of a cargo in it.
Yeah, we did some calculations, and actually when you would have dumped it full with grain, or for instance something like that, that would have been too heavy and the ship would have sunk. So we think loose goods that you could place throughout the ship.
Where we're digging on our boat is at an end. Let's go up and have a look at that. Oh God, look at the size of these nails.
Yeah, I mean, the preservation's fantastic. You can actually see some of the hammer blows of the smith that made the heads of those nails. I mean,
There are like 40,000 of these in the ship.
40,000, that's amazing. And they go literally all the way along. They're all perfect, amazing. Now, here we are. This is our end of our boat, and we're probably digging.
well, you don't know that for sure, Phil. I mean, it may be, but, you know.
Well, that has got to be the crucial question then. If we can find that block where the mast would have been, then we know that we're at the bow end.
Well, it may be a while before we find out which end of the barge we're revealing, because to piece together the story of this boat, every bit of evidence has to be recorded, even the basalt blocks scattered around the trench. Eric, the high-tech boys have moved in.
Yes, it's a drawing arm, really. It's a mechanical thing, which you can follow the beams and planks, and it sends coordinates to the computer. So it's just mechanical, and you just follow the lines of the beams and planks.
And does it do it three-dimensionally then?
Yes.
So it's essentially for recording?
It's a recording, it's a drawing arm, we call it.
Right. Back in England, we've got a bloke called Steve who does that with a pencil. The story revealed by excavating the other barge, Demern 1, was that it had been sunk accidentally, as it was discovered with all kinds of personal possessions still inside the cabin. The cabin is a unique discovery in itself, and it's been partially reconstructed.
Well, I mean,
off the boat here.
Yeah, they had to dismantle it on the ship, and this is a reconstruction of what was actually found. And with the dark line here, they've indicated what was found in position, and metalwork and woodwork. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. It's unique. No other ship has this sort of cabin.
I mean, it's got all the creature comforts. What amazes me, too, is they've obviously got something worth pinching, because that is a very efficient
incredible lock, yeah.
Amazing, isn't it, eh?
That means they could leave the ship overnight or whatever, or at least for a while, and keep the precious things secure inside the cabin.
Well, they obviously did have something worth pinching.
The finds inside the cabin include a stylus for writing and military-style sandals, which have prompted the suggestion that the owner may have been a retired soldier. But most impressive of all were a set of tools that included these wooden planes that even had the shavings still in the blade. The wooden parts are being preserved separately, but despite being just over 1,800 years old, even the metal looks as good as the day it was made.
I don't know, is the original lock hidden better than the reconstruction?
Yeah,
it really is. And there's just such an array of tools. I mean, you've got shears, entrenching tool, boat hook. It's just stuff that you instantly recognise.
I mean, this crowbar here is just about the same as what you could actually buy today.
I know. But
amazing.
Then again, you get things like that. What on earth is that?
Well, if you compare it to this one, you see it's the same kind of handle as this key has. But actually, they reworked it into a chisel. And they worked with it as a chisel because here you see they really hammered on it.
Most of these objects, they look very sort of domestic. They look very peaceable. But then on the top of that, you've got a spear.
Well, actually, if you look at all the wood preserved in the ship, if this was a spear, the wood would have been there. And it wasn't. So it was on board for another reason.
Maybe a knife or something like
Maybe
that?
a knife, whatever. But it wasn't used as a spear because we didn't find the shaft.
It certainly got me thinking about what surprises this barge might have in store for us. And with the basalt rocks now being lifted out of the way, the diggers can set about revealing more of the boat itself. It appears our boat was abandoned here on a bend in the river. And one of the reasons it's preserved so well is that it's been covered by the wet river silts laid down as the Rhine gradually shifted over the centuries. Eric, in fact, believes that the Roman army's biggest challenge here on the frontier was battling the natural forces of the river, and that our barge may be part of that story. It's only now that we've got the basalt blocks off that you can see what a dramatic angle the boat's at.
Nobody would position a ship against a revetment with an angle like this in a river bend where the strongest current came.
Yeah.
So all this points in the direction of intentional sinking of the ship.
But Victor's drawing them not sinking it, but pulling it out.
Well, they would have had to fix its position on the bank and...
but with these ropes?
Yes, we draw it on the bank a little and maybe throw in all these basalt blocks.
So are you suggesting that they put it in that position for a particular reason, like being a pier or a quay or something like that?
Well, what we know, we've done a lot of research in the environment, and we know the river was threatening the Roman road in the background around 100 AD. This construction was made in 100 AD. We have dated the poles of the construction.
Yeah.
And its shape suggests that it was meant to protect the road from erosion.
Eric thinks that the boat was used as a barrier to stop the river eroding the bank. The Roman engineers seem to have fought a constant battle with the river as it kept shifting position. But they'd no other choice because they were surrounded by marshland and everything had to be built on this narrow ridge of sandy soil.
So a critical thing, presumably, is going to be whether the date of this in relation to this. Because I can imagine that you wouldn't use a new boat for this, would you?
You wouldn't.
Eric, what's the oldest boat of this kind that has been found so far?
Well, we have one other boat of this type. It was found in Xanten. That's post-dated, 98 AD, which means they didn't measure the, what do you call it, the sapwood.
The sapwood,
the sapwood,
and the bark,
which will give you an exact date.
So
it's a post...
a bit after 98 then?
Could be 40 years after.
Oh, could be 40 years,
yes.
Right.
So if we do get an early date, this would be the oldest boat of that kind that
could
could
well
ever be
be
found.
Could well be.
Wow, yeah.
But to find out the date means doing something fairly brutal to our boat. Shocking, I know, especially as we haven't revealed the full width of the boat yet. But I'm assured it can all be pieced back together again. Apparently, they need to take quite a few samples in order to get a dendro date, and we'll find out more about that later. Mapping the changing course of the river has been crucial in developing an understanding of the frontier. But as you might imagine, the archaeology is a tad complicated in places. This is especially true at the other site we're digging here at Zandveld. Eric and Hera's excavations found the corner posts of a Roman watchtower built beside the river in the 1st century. But 100 years later the river had shifted, and pottery finds in this area suggested a bigger Roman presence, something like a small fort, may have been built here in the 2nd century. Sadly, the 2 trenches we've dug here haven't found any structural evidence of a fort.
So is that the story of this trench, do you think, that it's mainly medieval features?
I think so.
So we've got nothing sort of Roman in here that we need to take
We've got some
notice
Roman
of, really.
debris, you know, like little sherds or little pieces of roof tiling. But I think we have to declare this trench Roman empty. It's nothing there.
Right.
There's little more we can do here, except to say that if there is a fort on this site, it doesn't occupy a very big area. Henry's been creating a 3D model to analyse the frontier system. Essentially, the forts and watchtowers here weren't just about guarding the frontier, but were carefully positioned to control movement along the River Rhine.
I think the important thing is to realise that it's not only a military corridor. All the forts here depend on their supplies to be brought in from outside.
Right.
And these supplies are coming up from Switzerland and later on from Britain. This is the corridor that takes the trade to Scandinavia and to France.
Right.
So this is the motorway of Europe. Every bit of heavy traffic has to go on this river. So we're basically protecting the motorway of Europe here.
That's it, that's it. Yeah, and here you have the patrol system that goes with it. I mean, Look at the chain of watchtowers.
But I don't understand that. When it's such a flat landscape, why can't you just make do with one if you're just trying to watch that area of the river? Why do you need so many?
Because you can't actually see in a river area like that. If you're on the boat, you need to know where the next bend comes, and you need to know where you're heading, especially in a system like this where you have several branches at the same time. So they're way markers, but they're also the ones that stop pirates getting through. They need to be higher up to see further ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is there's somewhere between sort of traffic lights or maybe like lighthouses, something like that.
Yeah.
Damien, you don't do suspense, do you?
Well, no, I mean, oh, wait a minute, that's fantastic.
Look at that.
Oh, that is a bit, God, that is a bit nice, isn't it?
Some size, isn't it?
I tell you what, when you see that against the other one that we've just looked at, that has got to be twice the size of
Something
the one
like that, yeah. I mean, you're talking about twice the capacity at least, twice the volume of cargo.
And what amazes me too is the condition of the timbers. The timbers are every bit as good condition as what we've seen today, aren't they?
Yeah.
And the size of them too.
What's your first thought?
Well, it's fantastic. I mean, we should be finding these things in England. We're not, so we have to come here to find them.
They'd have had them in England?
Well, I think it's likely. We've got lots of Roman ports. We've done a lot of work in Roman port excavation, especially in London. We've got seagoing ships of the period of Demesne 140 AD-ish, and we haven't found the river barges. We've got dugout boats, we've got seagoing ships, and we're missing this link. This is a missing link.
And now, after a hard day's digging, we're beginning to see the details of this boat. Phil's first question, though, is fairly basic. Do we now know which end we're digging?
I think there is 80% chance that we now know what end of the ship it is. For the mast step would be on a quarter of the length of the ship, seen from the
front end.
From the front end.
Yeah.
So does that mean it would be in here?
It would necessarily be in this trench.
If it was the front end.
Yeah. So we can say 80% certain that this end is the stern.
Yes.
The back end of the ship, yeah.
That is amazing.
Disappointingly, there doesn't appear to be a cabin at the back of this barge, but it seems our experts have spotted something that makes this boat rather special.
It's peculiar to see a joining of planks, at least from the bottom planks, with a mortise and tenon joint, which is typical for the Mediterranean.
I was going to say,
so you're saying, hang on a minute, it's in the bottom planking that the joint
in the bottom planking.
Oh my God, that is unusual.
They're not saying more at the moment, but they've promised to explain tomorrow. Tomorrow's also the day when these wood samples will be analysed, and we'll find out if the date of this boat's also special. Right now, it could be the drink that's talking, but the experts seem genuinely excited. Yap said to me about 5 minutes ago that every archaeologist says that their latest dig is unique, but that this boat really is unique. Cheers, Phil. And hopefully, somewhere under that mud tomorrow, we're going to find out why. Do you want a beer? Come on then. Beginning of day 3 here in the Netherlands, on the old northern frontier of the Roman Empire. And one of the downsides of being here is that we can't show you more of this very beautiful country, because guess where Time Team are digging? Right in the middle of a building site. I don't think the archaeologists are even aware we're on a building site. Their eyes are transfixed on the perfectly preserved Roman barge we're digging. And today's the big day when we'll find out most about it. But first, there's still a bit more boat to reveal.
Morning, Phil. How are you getting on?
Oh, absolutely excellent. It really is something else down here.
It's looking very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, we've actually now got the full width of it now.
Oh, so this is the other side in front of it?
Yeah, and it's the full height of it, so we got the full profile. Right. And I mean, since I've been working here, you just really get that sense of being in a boat. Yeah. It's quite incredible.
I notice you're digging with a different implement, you know. This is not your normal trowel.
But you see, the normal trowel is never far away, is it?
I mean, what's that you're using?
Well, it's a kitchen spatula.
Oh, right,
It's wooden, you see.
This is what, to save damage in the wood, presumably?
That's right. The other favourite tool is your hands. And then, of course, to get it really clean, you sponge it down.
What's this thing behind you that looks like a sort of, I don't know, looks like a fence post or something?
Well, we've been calling it the mast, but we ain't really but we ain't serious about that.
Right. Well, it does look rather round and straight.
yeah, but there's a good archaeological reason why it's not.
Not the mast?
No, well, you
Right.
see, though, we got those big blocks of basalt.
Oh, yeah, these are the things we were fetching out yesterday.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, Yat was saying he thinks that they actually tumble in from the bank. And they've actually tumbled down across the base of the boat.
Right, yeah.
Well, now you see, there you've got basalt down there, but this pole is actually on top
right.
of the basalt. So if the basalt's got nothing to do with the boat, this certainly hasn't.
So you think perhaps it's a tree stump or something like
just
that?
something that has just settled in, and I suppose as the water level's gone, it's settled against the side of the boat.
Yeah. Oh, wow, yes, that's rather good, isn't it?
This is a model of Demern 1, the other Roman barge already excavated in this area. Jaap's brought it in to point out some of the differences with our boat.
As you can see, the general constructional elements are the same, but on the other hand, this ship is 2.5 meters wide, and the ship we are excavating now was at least 4 meters 80.
Wow!
Almost twice.
So does that make you think that the boat we're digging was actually longer than this one?
It's longer, but it's not twice as long. I think it's in between 30 or 35 meters long originally, and I think more towards 35 than towards 30.
These barges were the lorries of their day and the only cost-effective way of transporting goods, some 20 times cheaper than going by road. As I understand it, these barges helped to transport all kinds of Roman goods heading through to Britain. But I'm not sure exactly how the supply system worked.
What we have over there, what we've been looking at, is part of the river truck part of that journey, if you like. Utilitarian boats carrying bulk cargoes down the Rhine of all kinds, some of which were things like wine and so on later on that came over to Britain. And you had at least 2 different types of boat involved in that. The low, flat vessels like we've got out there, and then big, much rounder vessels. And I know Victor's been working on a couple of drawings here.
A 35-metre-long barge like ours would never make it across the North Sea, and the goods would be transferred to a seagoing ship like this. This particular ship, Blackfriars 1, was found in the River Thames in the 1960s. It's possible, in fact, that the goods were transferred from boat to ship here at Utrecht.
The name Utrecht means trajectum, which means the crossing point. People assume sometimes it just means crossing from one side of the river to the other, but it can also mean crossing from the river system into the sea.
And then, do they cross straight over from Utrecht to Britain?
Not quite. It is easier to sail down along the coast into the delta.
This is down here somewhere?
Down here where the big islands are, yes.
It's near the modern ferry ports of places like Vlissingen or Flushing.
And it's basically from there over you get a good sailing straight into the Thames estuary.
Yesterday, Jaap hinted that he'd seen things in this boat that make it a unique discovery. And now he plans to show Phil exactly what he meant by that. He's been busy sticking yellow pins into these planks to indicate where they've been fastened, using a mortise and tenon joint like this, a technique that's never been seen before in any of the Roman boats found here.
So what you're saying then, that these timbers are not merely joined to these, but they're joined
together
through there
yes.
by a piece of timber.
Yeah, really.
And these yellow pegs mark the pegs that actually seal the joint together.
Yeah, that's true, yes.
That explains why you get pairs of them against the joint.
What is actually the point of using mortise and tenon on a boat?
Well, because it makes the otherwise weak bottom, you see how distorted it is here, it's not a very strong construction, and it makes all the planks held together, and so they don't move like that easily, so they're less likely to leak. It makes the bottom stronger and tighter.
So far we have excavated approximately 15 ships from this type. It's the first time we see a mortise and tenon technique to join the planks. Normally the planks are held in place by quite a lot of iron nails through the floors. They probably used local people to make the aisles, the L-shaped pieces of wood, chaps that were normally making dugouts. those people were not used to have joined planks, and the Romans explained how to join planks.
So you
together.
think this is a very early example of a Rhine barge?
It should be, but maybe
Possibly
we
one
learn
of the
more about
earliest.
it by the dendrodating.
So, Damien, in a sort of scale of 1 to 10, where on earth does this boat rate in terms of importance?
Oh, it's 11.
It's
It's 11 because it's throwing all the accepted ideas up in the air.
It's that important.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
It is.
So important, in fact, that we need to take the chainsaw to it again. Apparently, we need more samples to analyse in order to find out precisely how old this barge is. This is done by a process known as dendrodating. In simple terms, this means analysing the tree rings or growth patterns in the wood and matching the patterns with other ancient trees of a known date. Esther Jansma and her team can compare the tree rings here with a database of trees from most of Europe. The problem has been that the sample bits of wood so far haven't contained enough tree rings.
How many do you like?
At least 80 or 100.
Right.
Yeah.
And did you get that from this?
Well,
this
we got it from the Kimstukken. I don't know the English term.
The L shape.
The L shape.
You know?
Oh, the brackets. Sort
Yeah.
of. Right.
Actually,
Yeah. Right.
One of the L-shaped pieces and
Right.
bottom plank were very long. But if you
Oh,
look,
crikey, yeah. How many years of that then?
this one is 208 rings, and this one contained 189. But when you look at the pattern, you can see all these periodic dips in the growth in this tree.
Even though these samples had over 100 tree rings, they haven't yet been able to find a match with the database, which is why they need more samples. The appliance of science is in evidence out here too. What are you doing with your little pump?
We're trying to get some groundwater up.
Why?
Because we want to analyze the water and see if the environment below us, where the ship is good enough to preserve the ship.
What are they planning to do with the boat at the moment?
Well, it's going to be filled up again after the excavation, and it will be protected as an archaeological monument.
So what will be on top of it?
Well, on this specific place there will be a bicycle path.
But you'll be able to tell them whether or not they can do that without the boat degrading?
Yes, that's it.
One of the bonuses of cutting sections out of the boat is that we can now see one of the mortise and tenon joints. For the past hour, various groups of archaeologists have been squatting round this little square of wood like it's the Holy Grail. Phil, why is everyone getting so excited about this?
Because it is just such a revolutionary way in this part of the world of joining planks together.
It's a mixing of two different technologies. We've got the very Mediterranean feature of these little tongues of wood, these tenons, which are used to join the bottom planking, which this is one of, edge to edge, to fasten them together, to make one huge sheet of plywood, if you like. I mean, we have boats built very, very similar way to this on the Thames in the 16th century, and they too managed to make the bottom planking fairly thin by strengthening it with these free tenons.
But that's 1,400 years later.
Yeah, this may be the great-great-great-great-great-grandfather of that technology.
But the main goal of the dig was to find out the date of this boat, and now that moment has finally arrived. According to Eric and Hera, this barge should date well before 100 AD if their theories about this frontier are to be proved right. To get the most precise date, the sample has to include the sapwood from just under the bark, as this contains the last growth rings in the tree that show exactly when it was cut down. This sample didn't have the sapwood, but it has given us an approximate date, which Esther's working on right now.
I can't wait to know.
All right, I'm showing you here. The last ring of the L-shaped piece dates in 52 AD, the last ring.
52 AD.
AD.
Right.
Add 25 rings, you come to 77 AD, plus minus 6 or something, and that's your post date.
So
77.
So we're looking at something in the early 80s. Well, I thought there'd be some reaction, Eric. Why is that so exciting?
No, I mean, it's just about, I mean,
I said 85.
Yes, you
didn't
did.
I?
Yes, I had 55, so I'm way out.
I said 71. I said 71.
Is this exactly the time that you wanted?
Yes, I mean, if you asked me this morning, I mean, the only thing I could think of, when was the first serious phase of construction on this land infrastructure?
Yeah.
To my opinion, it began around 85 AD. That's after 7 years of research. So, that was my guess.
So as well as all this infrastructure going in, they're getting the shipping sorted out to bring the
bulk
supplies.
carriers were constructed. So that was my guess.
I think they're quite happy with this date, Esther.
It's always good about Esther always brings the good news.
It's a great finish to the dig and their project in this area.
Oh, now you can really see its boat shape, isn't it?
But given the importance of this barge, I have to ask them, is there any chance the rest of the boat will ever be excavated?
If the groundwater level lowers and we notice that, there's degeneration of the wood, I think you call time team.
You think there's the possibility that one day we might get the phone call?
You might.
Come and dig the whole boat.
I think, we have to reschedule time team and do it in 4 days, I think.
We might just do that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Wouldn't it be great if we could just pull this entire barge out of the ground right now? Well, with the magic of graphics, we can do just that. This way, we can see the full scale of this unique river barge, which measured just under 5 metres wide and something like 35 metres long. This is the missing link, as Damien calls it, the earliest example of a Rhine river barge. It was constructed most likely for the Roman army, using a mix of local and Mediterranean shipbuilding techniques. Built around 85 AD, this barge seems to have had a working life of 15 years, before it was deliberately sunk around 100 AD to stop the River Rhine eroding the frontier road, a desperate measure by the Roman engineers fighting a constant battle against the forces of nature. And now there's just enough time to share the news with the people who did all the hard work. Ladies and gentlemen, the dendro date for our barge is, give or take 5 years, 85 AD, which makes it the earliest Roman barge ever discovered on the northern frontier.